Okay, so question number 1, system check muna ako para dire-diretso tayo. Can you hear me loudly and clearly po,
Yes
mga
po.
kapatid?
Yes
Yes
po.
po.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay, question number 2, can you see my slides po?
Yes, sir.
Yes
And
po.
question number 3, can you see the laser pointer in the slide po?
Yes
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 po.
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 Okay. So if all of those things are ready po sa atin, and then so I guess we can start our discussion na po. So this is Strategic Cost Management Midterm Examination Final Coaching. Hi po, I'm Kevin Troy Chua. Okay, so for today, we will be discussing all of the 6 topics that is included in your midterm examination, which is Introduction to Strategic Cost Management and Management Accounting, Cost Concepts, Classifications, and Behavior, Absorption and Variable Product Costing, CVP Analysis, and then Activity-Based Costing and Service Cost Allocations, and Standard Costing as applied in Cost Control. So yan po yung 6 na topics. Both theory and problem, syempre po yung laman ng ating examination. Although hindi na tayo makakapag-discuss masyado ng problems kasi what we will be focusing here is the reasoning or the managerial part of it. Kasi as you know, kung puro computations lang yung aralan natin, para lang din tayo nag-cost accounting. So ang focus po natin is syempre kung paano po siya on a managerial perspective. Because yun po ang expectation sa inyo sa strategic cost management, in which you will become really good managers and decision makers in the companies that you will be together with when you graduate. Okay? Okay. Sige po, start tayo with Introduction to Strategic Cost Management and Management Accounting. Now, before we discuss directly kung ano po ang strategic cost management, kailangan po nating balikan ang 4 management functions. Doon po sa inyo, nagaling po ng ABM strand, ito po ay na-discuss na sa inyo, not really in detail, but at least you had an introduction already of these 4 management functions in business or in an organization. Okay? So the first one is planning, which is determining proper courses of action and strategizing tactics to enforce in order to achieve the goal set. Ang ating pong planning, ang pinaka-starting point po ng lahat ng gagawin natin. Kasi nagsaset na po tayo ng goals at ano po ba talaga yung mga dapat natin gawin in order for us to achieve kung ano yung gusto nating i-achieve. Okay? And then, kapag ka po meron ka ng plano at hand or meron ka na pong goal na gustong tignan, no, ipapasok na po tayo sa organizing na management function. You already coordinate activities, you already delegate responsibilities, and you already allocate resources. Okay? Nagpapamigay ka na ng mga dapat gawin, inaasikaso mo na siya, inaayos mo na siya. When you say organizing, inaayos mo na po siya. Okay? Pag sinabi naman po nating leading, kasi umaandar na yung proseso, di ba? So, someone should be able to manage and guide the people along with proper motivation and direction. So, leading is not just about telling people what to do. It's actually guiding people on how to do things the correct way in order for them to add value dun sa goal ng entity na gusto nating ma-achieve. Okay? And then, habang umaandar lahat ng ginagawa natin, check natin through performance evaluation, check natin yung kailangan nating i-check. Parang gano'n, no? Which is controlling. Okay? So dito po kasi natin malalaman kung yung mga targets po ba natin ay na-achieve natin, at kung na-achieve po natin yung mga targets na yon, what shall we continue doing? At kung hindi po natin na-achieve yung mga targets na yon, ano po yung dapat nating i-stop gawin or ano po yung mga dapat nating i-improve. Those are the 4 management functions that you need to consider in the discussion of management, no, and applying it now in strategic cost management and in your lesson, which is management accounting. Okay, so in order for managers to be able to choose proper decisions that would add value to the success of the entity, the need for information now becomes highly important. So it's important for managers to be able to get po yung proper information, not only coming from financial statements or cost accounting, but information regarding the operations and the totality of the entity, so that they will be able to create decisions that will be able to add value to the organization. Remember that these managerial decisions are very important because ito po yung magsaspell kung magiging profitable or not yung operations natin, because one decision can spell success and another decision can spell failure. So in order for managers to do proper decision making, isa po sa pinakakailangan nila is the availability of information. At yung information na yun ang kailangan nila para makapag-decide ng maayos. Okay? Proper information must be accessible to managers so that they will be able to decide on the proper courses of action to take. Hindi lang basta maka-decide, kailangan po proper courses of action to take. Okay? Erroneous decision usually leads to high cost and unsuccessful results. So ayan naman po yung ayaw nating mangyari sa ating decision making, na magkakaroon tayo ng erroneous decisions. Tapos syempre dun sa decisions na yun kasi may kaakibat po siyang cost, and syempre ang unsuccessful results, sayang yung ginagastos natin if the results will just be unsuccessful. Okay, so yun po yung kailangan nating i-check ng mabuti, because the managers should have proper access to information, and not only proper information, relevant and correct information that would help them in their decision making. Now, applying it on our discussion, this is strategic cost management. Strategic cost management is the use of cost information as a tool for decision making and business development that would support the strategic placement of an entity. Paulit-ulit po nating sinasabi that when you are just dealing about cost information, cost accounting can already give you that. Okay? However, if you are already using that cost information as a tool for decision making and business development, ginagamit mo na po siya para ikaw ay makapag-decide. Ginagamit mo na siya sa ikagaganda ng operations mo. Ginagamit mo na siya in business development and improvement of the totality of the company. Then you are already doing cost management already. Okay? However, if you are using these cost information to manage the cost of the entity to contribute to proper decision making and business development, and that cost management is being applied on the strategic placement of an entity, that now becomes strategic cost management. So you will be going back to your concepts of strategic management, in which kailangan lahat ng ginagawa ng company may proper strategy so that it would add value to the customers, the employees, and the owners of the entity. No, so strategic cost management is not just actually cost management in its purpose, but actually strategic cost management is being applied on the strategic placement and what does the entity really wants to do na strategy. Now, if we are talking about that strategy, meron po tayong dalawang uri ng strategy, which is cost leadership at saka po product differentiation. Kapag ka po cost leadership, ang gustong mangyari ng company, lowest prices sila in the market. And for those companies to be able to become or to achieve the lowest prices in the market, kailangan sila, so syempre dapat mababa rin yung cost of production nila. They cannot offer a low price in the market if their costs are too high. Okay, so in order for them to provide the lowest prices in the market, kailangan mababa rin ang cost nila. Kumbaga, makakakuha sila ng mas malaking market kapag kamura yung produkto nila. As opposed to product differentiation, okay lang sa kanila na medyo high ang costs of production if it would be beneficial naman to the company in a sense that ay kasi medyo unique yung produkto natin, and dahil yung products natin ay unique, tayo lang ang meron nito, sa atin sila pupunta. Product differentiation is about uniqueness. Kami lang ang meron nito. So kahit medyo mahal ang cost of production natin, kung tayo ang company na magiging unique ang products sa company, sa atin, tayo yung company na magiging unique yung products na i-offer sa market, sa atin lahat sila pupunta kasi tayo lang ang meron yan. Yun ang tinatawag nating product differentiation. Tayo lang ang meron nito, kaya okay lang kahit medyo mataas ang cost of production if it would spell uniqueness para sa ating product. Ngayon, ang lagi kasi nating sinasabi is pag cost management, cost reduction agad eh, 'di ba? Nasanay kasi tayo doon. pag cost management, cost reduction, sige, pababain niyo yung cost, pababain niyo yung cost. Totoo naman yun, wala namang problema doon na magpababa tayo ng cost of production with certain quality requirements, doon tayo nasanay. But always remember, in strategic cost management, hindi natin tinitignan lagi na lower cost, lower cost, lower cost. Hindi. Yung cost management mo should be based and should support the strategy of the company. If the strategy of the company is cost leadership, then they should be able to provide the lowest prices in the market. So dapat lowest cost talaga. Pero kung ang strategy ng company ay product differentiation at okay lang na medyo mataas ang cost if it will make your products unique, iso-support din natin yon. Pero ang punto dito, okay lang, sige, kung mapapababa pa natin yung cost of production natin while achieving uniqueness or while achieving product differentiation, wala namang problema. It's just that we want to stress that strategic cost management is not just about cost reduction. It's much more of managing the costs of the entity as to their products, services, and operations, and supporting that strategically. Yun po yung gusto nating i-stress doon or i-highlight doon, that it's not just about cost reduction, it's actually about cost management with supporting the strategy of the entity. Yun po ang strategic cost management. Okay? Now, management accounting is the use of accounting information to serve as a primary tool for the internal users of accounting information to make decisions that will add value to the betterment of the entity. Management accounting is actually a branch of accounting that deals with internal decision making. Gumagamit tayo ng accounting information not for external reporting as what we are doing in financial accounting. We are actually using these information to decide. The owners and managers of the entity needs to decide. Kaya we need these accounting information. And that accounting information is being used by the management. Kaya po siya tinawag na management accounting kasi po gagamitin siya for decision making. As opposed to financial accounting that we are producing actually financial information into useful reports that will be used outside or external users of accounting information. So that's basically what management accounting sets apart than financial accounting. Although items in financial accounting will also be useful in management accounting, as with the cases of your financial statements. Historical information is actually being used also in management accounting. However, what we need to stress here is that management accounting is much more flexible than financial accounting, because financial accounting follows GAAP, management accounting does not. Because ang pinatutungkulan natin dito is paano ba magagamit ang accounting information para makatulong po sa mga decisions na gagawin ng company. If financial accounting will give you total sales and total costs, ang gagawin ng management accounting, i-detail niya yan per department or per sales agent or per branch. Because kailangan nating maintindihan yung inside ng company kung paano talaga siya nangyayari. Kaya po siya tinawag na management accounting, because you are using these information for decision making. Okay, ayun na pala yung in-explain ko. May next slide pala for that. Now, for financial accounting po kasi, we are much more dealing with standardized reporting through the generally accepted accounting principles. But management accounting actually thinks outside the box, okay? It is not only limited to pure accounting information, but decisions can be made by these managers from a variety of sources such as finance, marketing, research, economics, and management science. So marami po tayong specialized areas na pwede pong i-integrate sa management accounting para po makatulong sa managers sa kanila pong decision making. Okay. Now, with the structure of the entity's organization, you also need to understand the difference between the treasurer and the controller. The treasurer and the controller both reports to the chief financial officer. However, the treasurer and the controller, although they both report to the chief financial officer, they actually have different responsibilities. Treasurer is more of a finance function. Controllership is more of an accounting function. The treasurer is the one who makes sure that the company has finances. Controller makes sure that accounting information is available and that all statutory reports given to outside parties are being met. Okay? Kaya po ang treasurer, ini-expect natin siya na siya po ang bahala sa pag-aayos kung saan tayo makakakuha ng finances, no, provision of capital, and then also maintaining relationship with banks and other financial institutions, cash and receivables management, hindi po cash and receivables reporting ha, cash and receivables management. You manage the cash na ginagamit ng entity for their operations, you manage the receivables para ma-receive na siya ng company, okay? And then, nandun din po yung protection ng funds and securities kasi that would help you in financing also your entity and maintaining investor relations. Now, as to controllership, it's more of an accounting function. So si controllership division ang bahala po sa accounting process, financial reporting, planning and control, kasama po ang internal audit, tax administration, pagre-report natin sa outside parties, and managerial accounting. Lahat po yan ay sakop ng controllership. So just to be very concise about this and for you to get it very easily, treasurer is treasurer. Treasurer is a finance function, controller is an accounting function. Okay? So yun po yun. Now, as management accountants, you are also expected to have the following standards of ethical conduct. Okay? So meron po tayong apat na standards of ethical conduct, which is competence, confidentiality, integrity, and objectivity. Competence po is maintaining your galing as a management accountant. No, you are up to date with the latest business trends. You are pursuing further studies. You maintain professional competence. Nandun yung galing mo bilang management accountant. You are very knowledgeable as a management accountant kasi magagamit po yan para po sa pagbibigay natin ng recommendations po sa ating managers. Okay? Confidentiality naman po is being confidential in a sense na hindi natin dapat ilabas sa hindi authorized users kung ano man po yung hawak nating data and information. Okay? Integrity is more of working as a management accountant in a sense that you are avoiding anything that would discredit the profession, and also you are avoiding things that would impair kung ano yung iyong parang ang tawag dito, yung responsibilities na ina-expect sa'yo as a management accountant, like avoiding conflicts of interest or refusal of gifts na baka makaapekto sa trabaho mo. Okay? And then objectivity naman po is being objective in a sense that kailangan hindi ka nagiging biased, no? Kung ano lang talaga yung katotohanan at kung ano po yung findings ng iyong ginagawang reports at ginagawang analysis for the management, yun lang po talaga ibibigay natin. Both the good points and the bad points of everything should be reported to the management, and hindi ka dapat maglalagay ng bias in a sense that ay ito mas okay to kasi dito ako mas nakakakita ng potential, something like that. So you need to be objective in a sense that you need to be fair, no? Kailangan malaman ng management lahat. Okay? At hindi ka nagpapatungkol lamang sa isang partido or sa kabila. Okay? So yun po yung objectivity. Now, in management information systems, papasukan natin siya ng konsepto ng accounting. Gumagamit din po tayo nito as management accountant so that it would be able to give us po information not only about the past but also projected information. Okay? So, management accounting information system is a system that provides past, present, and projected information that is timely and relevant to be able to be used as a tool for decision making. Ganon din po ang kanyang purpose actually. Magbibigay siya sa iyo ng information kasi nga po gagamitin mo sa decision making. Okay? It is a system that captures data from operations within the firm. So ang ginagawa daw po niya, kumukuha ng data galing po sa operations natin, and then siya na ang mag-organize for those information to become useful for these managers and to be able to be use it or to be useful for decision making. It also provides a way for managers to generate information they needed. Kumbaga po, makikater niya depende sa pangangailangan ng managers. So, if your system is very sophisticated in a sense that, okay, give me total sales, it will give you a report about your total sales. Give me total sales with a breakdown of your sales per sales agent or sales per department or sales per branch. If your accounting system or management like information system can be able to do that, then it can provide you that information. Because if that information will be helpful for your decision making, then at least, 'di ba, yung management information system mo, if they will be able or they can be able to provide that to you, edi mas okay, 'di ba? Kasi it would cater your decision needs or decision making needs sa as to information. Now, nakaangkla din po dyan sa loob nun, syempre, is our accounting information system. Pero may separate subject po kayo niyan, no? Accounting information system is ginagamit po natin itong information system na ito, syempre, from the word itself, primarily in accounting. And meron po siyang tatlong basic components on how it runs, which is our input, process, and output. Okay? Input po is data being entered in the system. So ano po yun? Customer's name, address, quantity, and other relevant information. Ipoproseso na po siya ng system, gagawa ng invoices, kung kailangan ng approval ng higher management or ng supervisors, gagawan natin si customers ng billing statement, and then sales report, tapos journal entries. Okay? Ang output po niya is bibigyan kanya ng sales report, accounts receivable report, pwede ring mga analysis, other relevant reports, or pwede rin po siyang gumawa sa'yo for financial accounting purposes, mga financial statements, re-reviewin mo na lang, di ba? Or on a managerial accounting perspective, bibigyan kanya ng detailed reports na pwedeng makatulong sa'yo as a manager for your decision making. Now, always remember, in accounting information system, yan po ay may pasok na responsibility dyan. Kasi after all, kahit gano'n ka-sophisticated po yung iyo pong system, dahil tao pa rin po ang nagpapatakbo po niyan, ang nangyayari is baka mapasukan po natin siya ng wrong information. So ang nangyayari po is sa input pa lang, kailangan mabantayan na kasi tao pa rin naman ang gagalaw dyan. So, GIGO po tayo dyan, garbage in, garbage out. Kung mali ang mapapasok nating input, mali yung napaprocess, kaya mali rin po yung ilalabas sa ating output. Okay, so yan po yung ating accounting information system, and that is our discussion for introduction to SCM and management accounting. Any questions on the introduction?
Wala po.
Wala po.
Wala po,
Clear
sir.
po?
Clear po, sir.
Clear po? Okay, that's nice. Pasok tayo ng cost concepts. O teka, meron yata sa chat. None po. Oh, wala daw. Okay, ilan na tayo? 247. That's nice. That's nice. Pasok tayo sa second. Nasa una pa lang ako, ha? Sana may napulot kayo kahit papaano. Diretso tayo sa pangalawa. Cost concepts, classifications, and cost behavior. Cost reflects the amount of resources sacrificed. Naririnig niyo po ba ako? Uli.
Yes po.
Yes, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Cost reflects the amount of resources sacrificed in order for the company to achieve a certain objective, such as creation of goods or rendering of services in order to earn revenues. Bago ka kumita, may isa-sacrifice ka munang amount. In service companies, bago ka makapag-render ng service, bibili ka ng mga supplies related to the service that you are rendering. You will be paying salaries of your employees. You will be paying rent for the spaces that you rent. Okay? You will be paying rent for the spaces you use. For merchandising, bago ka makabenta ng produkto, syempre, bibili ka muna ng mga produkto na kailangan mo ibenta. Okay? On a manufacturing perspective is bago ka makabenta, bibili ka muna ng raw materials, babayaran mo yung mga trabahador mo, and other overhead may incur mo. So, before you even sell anything is kailangan talaga may sacrifice ka munang gagawin, which is cost, no? Gagastos ka talaga muna. Okay? And cost is isa po yan sa talagang kailangan nating i-manage for a company to become profitable. Okay? Ganun po siya. So, On a managerial emphasis, it works like this. Techniques like budgeting and forecasting helps the entity plan the future and subsequently control operations through performance evaluation and variance analysis when actual data becomes available. Gumagamit po tayo ng cost information kasi gusto natin kontrolin yung cost natin. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, one of the things that we do in cost management is cost control. Kailangan nakokontrol natin yung cost natin, mabababa natin siya para makatulong siya sa profitability. Alam naman natin lahat yan. Hindi lang po tungkol sa pag-i-increase ng selling price tayo pwedeng maging mas profitable. Mas maganda po na habang na-maintain natin yung prices natin, yung cost natin mas mapababa natin. Lalo na kung ikaw ay nag-achieve na mag-strategize as to cost leadership. Okay, so how will you be able to do that? You can use techniques like budgeting, forecasting, and then later on, pag mayroon na pong actual amounts or actual operations na results na kinalabasan, magpa-performance evaluation na po tayo, magva-variance analysis na tayo pag maging available na po yung ating actual data. Okay, a manager would have to think of ways in order to reduce costs and other expenses on the standpoint of increasing profits. Strategically, however, increases or decreases in cost should support the strategic positioning set by the entity, basically referring to how to achieve competitive advantage. Again, if you want to achieve competitive advantage by being a cost leader, you should, or your cost management should support it in a sense that kailangan mo mapababa yung cost of production mo. But if your strategy is to achieve competitive advantage by being unique or by offering differentiated or unique products in the market, it's okay if a bit kailangan yung cost natin tataas pero kailangan i-manage mo pa rin. Hindi rin naman kasi tama na ay okay lang mataas ang cost natin kasi product differentiation naman yung gusto natin i-achieve. We want to be unique. Hindi rin po ganon. At that point, kailangan mo rin pong i-check yung iyong cost of production. Kung hindi mo mapababa dahil product uniqueness nga gusto mong gawin eh. So, kung hindi mo man mapababa, dapat ma-maintain mo man lang at least. Okay? Now, on a strategic management standpoint, management functions, cost management, planning, and decision-making should be in line with the entity's vision, mission, goals, and objective. Vision is what the company wants to become, to be the leading ice cream manufacturing company in the Philippines. Mission, to be able to bring smiles to the Filipino people by offering tasty ice cream. Vision is what the company wants to become. Mission is what will you do in order for you to achieve your vision. And then the goals and objectives are actually the things that you need to do in order for you to do your mission. So ngayon, dapat yung apat na binanggit kong yan, vision, mission, goals, and objective, kailangan po sila ay suportado ng una or isosupport natin doon yung cost management principles natin at cost reduction natin. Okay? You want to become the leading ice cream manufacturing company in the Philippines. How? To bring smiles to the faces of the Filipino people by offering tasty ice cream. O yun yung vision and mission mo. Pero paano? No? Kasama po sa pag-achieve natin ng vision at sa paggawa natin ng mission ng company is reducing cost or managing cost in order for us to become profitable, and not just only becoming profitable, adding value to the entity itself. Okay? Again, mission and vision statements are not just mere printed statements on a company's office. It actually spells a lot about the entity. It should be something that the entity, the employees, the management, and everyone in the office actually needs to inculcate it in their hearts para may goal congruence. Pag sinabing goal congruence, pare-pareho lang po kayo ng goals na gustong i-achieve. Okay? When an entity is continuously profitable, value continuously increases, which goes back to the importance of the alignment of cost control with the entity's vision and mission. A manager should always put cost management in mind on a strategic standpoint. Isa-isahin natin. Kapag ka daw po ang isang company continuously profitable, syempre gusto natin mangyari yun, di ba? It would add value to the company. Value to the employees. Pwede mo kasi silang bigyan ng bonus. Kapag ka profitable ka, may pampabonus ka kasi malaki kinita mo, di ba? It would also add value to the customers kasi nag-e-enjoy sila dun sa product na nakukuha nila galing from you. And it also provides value syempre sa owners and managers, 'di ba? Na talagang pinaka nag-e-enjoy dun sa kinalalabasan ng ating operations, no? So, it's really important to align your cost management concepts and cost control with the entity's vision and mission kasi kung hindi po nagtutugma yung vision and mission ng company sa ginagawang cost management and strategies ng company, hindi tayo makaka-achieve ng value. So on a strategic standpoint, kailangan kabit-kabit yan. If you need to achieve this strategy, then what you should do is to be able to support your strategic standpoint at kasama po sa support mo doon is your cost management. Okay? So yun po yun. Now, based on functional areas, yung mga cost po natin na ginagastos or na-incur may either be manufacturing or non-manufacturing. Alam niyo naman na po yan. Manufacturing cost ay lahat po ng ginagastos natin or na-incur natin in order for us to do our products, which is materials, labor, and overhead. Non-manufacturing cost naman po natin is lahat po na na-incur natin not actually related to the products that we are doing pero kailangan pa rin nating magastos for the company to continue operating, like your operating expenses, marketing expenses, advertisement, administrative expenses, and selling expenses. Hindi man na siya related dun sa production mismo, but you also need to incur that to continue operating. Now, these are also our costs as to the timing of matching with revenues. Pwede po siyang product cost or period cost. Halos medyo pareho sila ng manufacturing versus non-manufacturing cost. However, tatawagin mo na siya ngayong product cost and period cost. Depende po naman sa timing kung kailan siya pumapasok sa income statement. Okay? Product cost naman po is kung hindi pa siya completed as to hindi pa complete yung products in itself, edi syempre work in process inventory pa po yun. Pero kung complete na po siya, papasok na po siya as finished goods inventory, but it will only enter the income statement when the goods are already sold because dun mo lang po siya mailalagay as cost of goods sold because as you know, work in process inventory and finished goods inventory are included in your statement of financial position. So, ang timing niya with revenue, pag nabenta mo na siya, di ba? Unlike in period cost, mga period cost po kasi is based on time period in a sense that pag na-incur mo na yan, papasok na agad sa income statement. So, basically, ang pinakamagandang example talaga dyan, operating expenses din, rent, salaries, and other administrative and general expenses. So, tatawagin mo lang siyang product cost and period cost. Nakasanayan din kasi natin yan na kapag direct materials, labor, overhead, product cost. Totoo naman, no? Hindi naman mali yung una nating understanding. It's just that kailangan natin baguhin ng konti yung ating mindset. Manufacturing cost siya kung tungkol siya sa produkto. Non-manufacturing cost siya kung tungkol siya sa mga bagay na hindi tungkol sa produkto mo pero nai-incur mo pa rin to continue operating. But with the timing of matching with revenues, it's not yet in the income statement when it's not yet completed or if it's completed but not yet sold, basically in your balance sheet. But if goods are already sold, then it enters your income statement. So basically, it will be matched with revenue. However, period cost po siya kapag na-i-incur mo po siya based on time periods, basically kung kailan mo po siya na-incur. And yun nga po, the best example is operating expenses like rent, salaries, and other administrative general expenses. Yun po siya. So if an entity is managing, or let's say for example, the management is thinking about things, this and that, pag-uusapan nyo is manufacturing cost kung yung mismong product yung pinag-uusapan nyo. And kapag ka naman po mga expenses na hindi na related sa production process, non-manufacturing cost na yon. Pero pag ang pinag-uusapan nyo na po, kailan po siya mamamatch with revenue, ang magiging term nyo na sa kanya, the cost, period cost. Pero hindi ko rin po kino-close yung ano sa inyo, yung konsepto. Pareho lang sila actually. It's just that ang tinitignan lang natin dito sa product and period cost, yung matching niya with revenues. Kailan siya po mina-match sa revenues. Okay? So yun po. Pero halos pareho lang sila kung tutuusin. So hindi kayo dapat malito dun. Okay? Now, as to cost traceability, direct cost and indirect cost. Okay. Linawin lang natin. Nasanay po tayo sa cost accounting and control na direct cost, direct materials, direct labor. Indirect cost, indirect materials, indirect labor, and other manufacturing overhead. Guys, on a cost accounting perspective, yes, that's true. But as managers, lalawakan nyo po yung perspective nyo. Okay? Pag sinabi pong direct cost, is it traceable enough to a particular product line, segment, department, division, or branch? Pag indirect cost, not directly traceable, minsan allocated lang, hindi nila kontrolado. Okay? So let's say, for example, if we are talking about the whole production department, direct cost po yung salary ng production supervisor. But if we are already talking about on a departmentalized level, 'di ba buong production pinag-uusapan natin. Papasok tayo ngayon kasi kung buong production process may production head talaga diyan, as in yung buong production siya may hawak. Eh may mga departments yan, department A, department B, department C. So yung salary ni production head, direct cost siya ng buong production department. Pagpasok mo ngayon sa department level, indirect cost na siya. Bakit? Kasi yung salary ni production supervisor, production head, i-allocate mo na siya ngayon per department. Nagiging indirect cost siya on a departmental level. How much more on a product level? So sa product level, yun na nga, nabanggit ko na sa inyo kanina. Ano na po ang direct cost natin on a product level? Eh di direct materials and direct labor lang. Indirect cost na po sa kanya yung allocated salary of the production head. Okay? So hindi na lang ang cost traceability is not just about being direct or indirect materials, direct or indirect labor. Titignan mo yung point of view or yung perspective. If you're talking about the product perspective lang, syempre direct materials and direct labor yung direct cost mo. Ang indirect cost mo is lahat ng overhead. Pero if you're talking about on a departmental level or yung mismong production level na, lahat ng cost traceable on that specific area, direct cost na siya. So ibig sabihin, yung salary ni production head, direct cost pa rin yun. Kung ang pag-uusapan mo ay yung buong production process. Pero yung salary ni production head ay nagiging indirect cost na siya ng departments or ng products kasi inallocate na lang sa kanila, hindi nila kontrolado. And because of that, meron din po tayong tinatawag na controllable or non-controllable cost. Controllable cost po, yung mga madaling desisyonan, dagdagan nyo ng grams of materials yan. 7 hours nating i-work yung product na yan. Kung dating 6 hours lang, gawin nating 7. Okay? Ganun po siya. Kontrolado ni manager, kontrolado ni supervisor. Pwedeng dagdagan, pwedeng bawasan. Kaya po, at any time, pwede siyang baguhin. It can be altered in the short run. Okay? However, pag sinabi pong uncontrollable cost, ito na po yung mga hindi siya kontrolado, kaya nga siya uncontrollable. Hindi siya kontrolado on that certain department. For example, kunyari sila yung may-ari ng mismong factory facility, so syempre may depreciation yon. Depreciation of factory facility, eh di ba per department tsaka per product mag-allocate ka nun? I-allocate mo yung overhead na yun eh, di ba? Kasi buong ano yun, kabuuan yun, di ba? Depreciation of factory equipment o di kaya depreciation of the factory facility itself. Ina-allocate lang natin na cost yun. So uncontrollable yun. Hindi kasi yun kontrolado ng mismong department. Okay? Ngayon, yung mga uncontrollable costs, it can only be altered in the long run. For example, yung mismong production facility or yung mismong factory equipment, hindi naman siya basta-basta mapapalitan in a snap of a finger na, ay, ayaw na namin gamitin yung machine na yan, parang medyo babagal-bagal, magpalit na tayo ng bago bukas. Hindi pwede yon, no? Usually, ang mga items na nakaangkla or nakakabit sa uncontrollable cost, sila yung mga hindi mabilis mapalitan. Sana all. Sana all, di ba? No? Hindi mabilis mapalitan. Yun po yung mga, it can only be altered in the long run. Production facility or the factory facility, mga equipment natin. Yung mga effects niya like depreciation is ina-allocate sa mga departments, hindi kontrolado per department or per product. Okay? So yun po yung sinasabi nating cost controllability. Okay? And then as to decisions, pasadahan na lang natin kasi gets nyo naman na to. Opportunity cost, may cost po kasi na ano po ba yung benefit sa isang option na finorgo mo. Okay? May option A ka, may option B. Si option A ang pinili mo, ano yung nasayang nung hindi mo pinili si option B? Nung si option B pinili mo, ano yung nasayang nung si option B yung pinili mo, ano yung nasayang kay option A? Okay? Differential cost naman po, actually medyo ano na yan medyo related naman yan. Differential cost naman po is, actually merong separate lesson yan, differential cost analysis. So titignan mo lang kasi sa kanya kung in deciding something, magkano ang cost on this alternative, magkano ang cost on this alternative, you get the difference and positive ba siya or negative, then decide. Parang ganon. Relevant cost naman po is when you're deciding on something, ano lang po ba yung cost na makaka-affect sa aking decision. So for example, meron akong special order for 5,000 units, no? Dalawang option, pwedeng tanggapin ko, pwedeng hindi. Ngayon, ang tanong, magbabago ba ang fixed cost mo pag tinanggap mo yung special order? Tapos sinabi sa'yo, hindi. Whether tanggapin natin yung special order or hindi, yun pa rin yung capacity natin. Yung fixed cost mo pareho pa rin. O hindi yun relevant. Hindi yun relevant sa decision, di ba? Kasi whether tanggapin mo yung special order or hindi, yun pa rin naman yung fixed cost mo. So, nagiging irrelevant sa decision yung ating fixed cost. So, pag sinabing relevant costing, kung ano lang yung relevant sa decision, yun lang yung papansinin mo, okay? Marginal cost, actually medyo economics ang dating nito. Medyo related siya sa average cost per unit in a sense na ang gusto kasi nating mangyari, habang lumalaki yung production kasi, yung number of units na kumakain ng fixed cost, mas dumadami. So yung fixed cost per unit, mas lumiliit. So gusto nating ma-achieve sa average cost per unit is ma-maximize natin yung production in a sense that mas maraming kakain ng fixed cost natin. Para yung fixed cost natin, masulit natin. Parang gano'n, di ba? Kasi alam nyo naman, ang fixed cost, whether you produce 0, you produce 100,000, yun di ba? Hindi yun mababago. So ang gusto natin sa marginal cost na perspective dyan sa average cost per unit, maraming products tayong mamamaximize na gawin para yung fixed cost natin maraming kakain. Okay? Sunk cost naman po, yan po yung mga decisions na hindi na relevant on the current situation you're thinking about. So if you're thinking to buy a new equipment, sunk cost na po yung binili mo, yung cost ng binili mong old equipment. Okay? Hindi na yun, hindi na relevant yun eh. Okay? Kasi wala na, hindi mo na mababalik yun dahil nabili mo na siya that time. So, bumili ka man or hindi ng bago, wala nang effect yung sunk cost na yun. Out of pocket cost, lahat naman po ng cost and expenses na nagre-require ng cash outlay. Talaga maglalabas ka ng cash. Kaya po siya tinawag na out of pocket cost. Okay, so yun po. Yung mga pwedeng magamit natin for decision making. Okay, so as to cost behavior, alam nyo na po to, cost accounting pa lang, balikan lang natin. Variable cost po, pag ganyan ang cost behavior, nakadepende sa production. If you produce 0, wala kang variable cost na magagastos. But if you do many, di mas mataas ang total variable cost mo. Okay? Fixed cost is whatever level of production within the relevant range, hindi magbabago yan. So whether you produce 0, you produce 100,000, you will incur the same amount of fixed cost. For example, rent, no? Whether you produce 0 or 100,000, you will still pay the same amount of rent unless magbago siya. Diba? Mixed cost, pareho po siyang may variable or fixed component, kaya kailangan mo siyang i-separate para mas maintindihan ng managers yung gagawin natin. Step cost naman po is it becomes fixed at a certain range. Tapos pag nagbago yung range, magba-variable kasi magbabago siya. And then it becomes fixed again. So let's say for example, mga mga sales agents mo. Pag nakabenta kayo ng 1 to 50 units, ang commission nyo 1,000 pesos. Pero pag 51 to 100 units yung nabenta nyo, may commission kayong 2,000. Pero pag 101 units to 150 units, may commission kayong 3,000. Step ko siya kasi on a certain range, it's still fixed. Whether you sell 1, whether you sell 50, ang commission ni sales agent 1,000. Pagdating ng 51, magiging 2,000 na yung commission niya. Pero whether you sell 75, 2,000 pa rin yung commission niya. And when you sell 100, 2,000 pa rin yung commission niya. Pero pag tungtong mo ng nakabenta ka na ng 101 units, magiging 3,000 na yung commission na ibabayad sa sales agent. So yun po yung step cost. So kapag ka po siya ay ginagraph, mukha siyang hagdan. Kasi 1,000, tapos biglang nag 51 units, gagano na siya. 2,000, biglang nag 101 units, 3,000. Ganun siya. Mukha siyang hagdan. Kaya siya tinawag na step cost. Okay? Yung mixed cost po natin, pwede nating i-separate sa tatlong paraan: high-low method, least square regression, and scatter diagram. Ako na po ang mag-a-announce dito. Walang lalabas na scatter diagram kasi po mahaba po yun computein and very mathematical po yun. I don't have the luxury of time to discuss problems and to go back to the steps of high-low method and least square regression. So balik na lang po tayo sa YouTube channel ko if you need guidance on how to compute the separation of mixed cost using high-low method and least square regression method. Meron po akong video, meron din po si Sir Ryan Roque. So I hope that those videos will be helpful for you kung sakaling medyo nalilito pa rin po tayo dyan sa mga methods na yan. We don't have actually the luxury of time to discuss them now. So punta na lang po tayo sa YouTube channels namin ni Sir Roque. Meron po kaming comprehensive examples on how to do that very quickly. So yun po. And that's our discussion of cost concepts, behaviors, and classifications. Diretso na po tayo ng absorption and variable costing. After ng absorption and variable costing, that's the end of part 1. Magkakaroon tayo ng 10-minute break. Then diretso tayo dun sa mga bakbakang computations from CVP, ABC, and the standard costing. Absorption variable tayo, yung una nating discussion na may computation. Pero babalikan na lang naman natin yung mga concepts, although we have example problems din naman. Okay, so start tayo. Ang absorption costing po ang kinasanayan nating income statement na sales minus cost of goods sold, at ang laman po ng cost of goods sold ay yung materials, labor, variable, and fixed overhead. Okay? Which will give you your gross profit less your operating expenses, which is variable selling, general, and administrative expenses, and your fixed selling, general, and administrative expenses, which will lead to giving you your net income. That is the traditional GAAP income statement. So the features of absorption costing includes, that's actually the full costing method that we call. It's presented to the external users because yan po ang requirement ng generally accepted accounting principles. Kung baga po, yan po yung ating income statement na pinag-aaralan sa financial accounting. Again, all of your direct materials, direct labor, variable overhead, and fixed overhead forms part of your product cost, and then variable and fixed general selling and administrative expenses will be OPEX or operating expenses. Nagkakaroon po tayo ng cost splitting. Siya po ay ima-match mo lang sa revenues when goods are sold, and it's matched as to revenues as cost of goods sold. However, those costs enters your balance sheet as inventory when those costs are, or when those products rather, are not still sold. So unsold po yun. So ganito lang kasimple. Kung sold, papasok sa income statement. Kung unsold, sa balance sheet muna siya papasok kasi asset pa po natin siya. Variable costing naman po is a technique na ginagamit internal. Pang ano lang yan, pag managerial decision making lang siya. Hindi po tayo cost of goods sold or operating expenses. Ang ginagawa po natin sa variable costing is you deduct sales to all of your variable costs, which is your direct materials, direct labor, variable overhead, and variable general, selling, and administrative expenses. And the difference between the two is called contribution margin. Then you deduct your fixed cost, which is your fixed manufacturing overhead, and your fixed general selling and administrative expenses, and you get your net income. So the features of variable costing include, it's called the contribution margin approach, which is again, contribution margin is sales minus your variable cost, and it's only presented to internal users. And because it is not GAAP conforming, it should not be used in your income statement presented outside. Okay? So hindi po siya allowed na i-present outside. Okay? So yun po yun. To get your CM, ito po yung variable cost mo. Lahat ng variable cost mo, materials, labor, overhead, and variable, general selling and administrative expense. Now, in variable costing po, tinitreat natin si fixed manufacturing overhead diretso as a period cost. Okay? Imbis na dati product cost component siya sa absorption costing. Kasi yun ang sabi ng GAAP kung ano yung mga nakakaapektong cost, ilalagay mo as product cost. Dito hindi. Kasi ang ating reasoning dyan is kasi whether you produce zero or you produce many, ano yan ay mai-incur mo yan So parang hindi daw tama na nagkakaroon tayo ng cost splitting as to goods sold and inventory because whether you produce or not, you will incur that fixed manufacturing overhead. So ang nangyayari, naging period cost siya. Kaya nagiging direct deduction siya in order to get your income. So in variable costing, always remember, there is no cost splitting of fixed manufacturing overhead in case of unsold ending inventories because ang product cost mo lamang po sa variable costing is until variable general selling and administrative expenses and your variable overhead. Your fixed overhead becomes a period cost. Okay? So nawawala po yung cost splitting. So matotal, ang pinagkaiba lang po ng absorption costing and variable costing is your fixed manufacturing overhead component. Dahil ang fixed manufacturing overhead po ay ini-split pa natin as to cost of goods sold kung nabenta at inventory kung hindi pa nabebenta. Pero pag variable costing, whether mabenta mo o hindi ang mga produktong yan, ang fixed manufacturing overhead incurred during the period, diretso, i-deduct mo po siya. Okay? So, in absorption costing, fixed overhead component of goods, inventory when unsold, and it will only be deducted as cost of goods sold when sold. Pag variable costing, buo po lahat ng fixed manufacturing overhead. Wala po tayong deferral dyan. Pag sinabi pong deferred fixed overhead, yun po kasi yung fixed manufacturing overhead na nakapasok pa as inventory kasi hindi pa siya nabenta. So hindi mo ma-minus as cost of goods sold kasi hindi mo nga mabenta. Hindi pa nabebenta. So ganun po yun. Okay? So fixed manufacturing overhead will be deducted in full during the period. Yun po yung ating variable costing. Ayun. Sige. Try natin to. Sa mga klase ko sa 2-4, 2-10, alam na nila to kasi ito example ko sa kanila. But for the sake of everybody, para mabilisan nating magawa kung paano po ba talaga yung difference nitong variable and absorption costing, edi let's do this problem. Okay, so ganito po siya gawin. Wala tayong beginning and ending inventory dito, so your production is equal to sales. So ang mangyayari po sa atin dyan ay ganito. No? Ang nabenta daw po natin is 50,000 units. Your selling price is 30, so just multiply, you get 1,500,000. Less cost of goods sold, paano po nakuha yung 14? Which is your variable production cost of 10 per unit. Tsaka fixed overhead component, wag nyo kalilimutan yan kasi absorption to. So 4 pesos per unit, kaya siya 14. Okay, so 50,000 times 14, that's 700,000. Which will give you your gross profit of 800,000. Now for your operating expenses, lahat ng GSA, General Selling and Administrative, 100,000 na fixed at saka 50,000 units na nabenta times 2 per unit. Okay, which gives you 200,000 and net income of 600,000. However, for variable costing, 50,000 units times 30 pa din, but all of your variable cost is 10 plus 2, which is 12. Your CM is 900,000. And then lahat po ng fixed cost, deduct mo diretso lahat, which is 200,000 plus 100,000. So that's 300,000, which will give you a net income of 600,000. Always remember that when production is equal to sales, your absorption costing net income is equal to your variable costing net income. Pareho lang po sila. Bakit? Dito kasi, dahil pareho lang ang production at sales, wala tayong fixed manufacturing overhead component na naging ending inventory. Lahat ng fixed cost mo, nabawas mo pa rin. As compared to your variable cost na talaga namang lahat ng fixed cost mo, mina-minus. Kaya wala pong difference kung pareho lang ang production mo at lahat ng production mo, nabenta mo. Okay? That's our first scenario. Kung ang second scenario naman natin is mas mataas po ang production kaysa sa sales, ibig sabihin nagkaroon ka ng ending inventory. Bakit ganyan? 50,000 units, 40,000 units lang yung nabenta mo, may ending inventory ka na 10,000 units. So ganito gagawin mo. Sa sales mo, 40,000 times 30, and then your cost of goods sold will just be 40,000 multiplied by 10 na production cost na variable at 4 sa fixed. Okay? So 40,000 times 14, 560. So that's your gross profit, 640,000. Operating expenses is 40,000 units sold times 2. Ito po yun, variable GSA, plus fixed na 100,000. You get your net income of 460,000. Now, as to variable costing naman po, ganun pa rin, 1,200,000. Your variable cost is 12, so 480,000. So that's 720,000. Lahat po ng fixed cost minus natin 300,000 and you get a net income of 420,000. Now, this is the premise. If your production is greater than sales, which means you have ending inventory, your net income under absorption costing will be greater than your net income under variable costing. What is the rationale? Dito po kasi, hindi po lahat ng fixed manufacturing overhead ay nabawas natin dahil meron pa po tayong fixed manufacturing overhead na nakapasok dun sa 10,000 units na nasa balance sheet mo pa. Wala pa siya sa cost of goods sold in your income statement kasi nga hindi mo pa nabenta. So ang mangyayari, yung component ng fixed cost na yon hindi mo pa nabawas talaga, kaya magiging mas mataas ang net income mo sa absorption costing. However, your variable costing net income would really go down because lahat ng fixed cost mo walang na-differ, minus mo agad. So, pag magre-reconciliation ka ngayon, ganito lang siya. Ang fixed cost mo in ending inventory would be your 4 pesos based on production na fixed overhead times 10,000 units na naka-inventory pa, 40,000. So, anong gagawin mong shortcut to be able to reconcile? Ang absorption costing net income mo is 460,000. Pero with the thinking sa variable costing na, di ba sa variable costing lahat ng fixed cost mina-minus natin. So dapat lahat ng fixed overhead component in ending inventory, bawas mo na rin siya. Kasi sa variable costing mina-minus agad yun eh. So 460 minus 40, 420,000. Ganun lang. Okay? Di mo na siya kailangang gawin lahat. Lalo na kung yung exam medyo mabilisan, tas parehong tinanong, maggaganyan ka na lang para masagot mo siya agad. Kung variable ka naman, papunta ng absorption costing, ganito naman iisipin mo. Ay, sa variable costing, lahat ng fixed cost components na minus na yan eh. E pag absorption costing, yung hindi pa nabebenta, hindi pa nababawas yung fixed cost component nun eh. So, i-add mo. So, yung 420,000, i-add mo muna yung fixed overhead ng ending inventory. Kasi sa absorption costing, hindi pa yun nababawas. So, add mo siya. Okay? So, yun yung rasonan na nung mga ina-add subtract natin. So, dapat hindi nyo man kabisado yung formula talaga, alam nyo yung gagawin kasi alam nyo yung konsepto inside. Okay? So, pasok tayo dun sa mas mahirap. Ano? Kapag ka meron ng beginning, production during the period, sales, at saka ending inventory, tas mas mataas na yung sales kaysa sa production. Okay? So, 60,000 units yung nabenta times selling price of 30. Cost of goods sold mo naman 14 pa din. So that's your gross profit of 960,000. And your OPEX is 60,000 units sold times 2 plus 100,000, which is 220,000. Net income is 740,000. Okay, tapos po ito po yung sa absorption costing. Okay, 740,000. Tapos sa variable costing naman po is 60,000 na nabenta times 30 minus 60,000 times 12 na variable. CM natin is 1,080,000 and then your fixed cost is 300,000 lang. Ito lang, kung ano lang yung na-incur mo during the period. 300,000, 780. Okay, so anong nangyari? Mas mataas ngayon yung net income mo sa variable costing. Bakit naman po ganon? When your production naman po is lower than sales, your net income under absorption costing will be lesser than your net income under variable costing. Bakit? Dito po sa absorption, dalawang uri ng fixed cost ang minus mo. Yung related sa current period at yung beginning inventory na ngayon mo lang nabenta. Kaya mas malaki yung fixed cost na nabawas mo. Okay? Pero pagdating naman po sa variable costing, kung ano lang yung fixed cost this period, yun lang kasi yung minus mo. So ang dating, yung mga pinang-minus mo, mas maliit. Kaya yung net income mo under variable costing, mas malaki. Now, kukunin nyo itong dalawang to. Yung una, fixed overhead component ng beginning inventory. So 20,000 units times 4, which is 80,000. At saka fixed overhead in ending inventory na 10,000 units times 4, 40,000. Paano mo ngayon i-reconcile? O, ganito gagawin natin. Ang absorption costing net income natin is 740,000. Tapos, ang pupuntahan natin, variable costing net income. So, ganito po ang magiging gagawin natin dyan. Ay, di ba pagka variable costing net income, current period lang dapat yung ima-minus kong overhead? So anything in relation to beginning inventory, which is from the last period pa yan, hindi ko yan dapat i-minus. Kasi pag variable costing, yung current fixed cost lang eh. So i-re-add ko yan, 80,000. Tapos, ay, itong ending inventory ng fixed cost, this production period yan na fixed cost eh. Dapat i-minus ko yan kasi sa variable costing, dapat lahat ng current period cost ma-minus ko. So, ma-minus ko yung 40,000. So, 740 plus 80 minus 40, 780. Yun. Nakarating tayo doon sa 780. Tapos, variable costing net income naman natin, pupunta tayo na absorption. Babagaliktad mo lang yung konsepto. Variable costing net income, 780,000. Ay, pag absorption costing, pati yung beginning inventory from the last period, ngayon lang kasi nabenta yan. Kaya yung fixed cost component niyan, ngayon ima-minus yan sa absorption costing. Dapat ma-minus ko yan ngayon kasi ngayon lang siya nabenta. Ma-minus ko, 80,000. Tapos pag absorption costing, uy, pag ending inventory yung fixed cost, ano pa yan? Asset pa yan. Hindi pa yan talaga na ma-minus sa income statement kasi nasa balance sheet pa yan. I-re-add ko yung 40,000 para makarating ka sa absorption costing net income na 740,000. So, ganito lang po lagi ang inyo pong tatandaan sa absorption and variable costing. Number 1, ang absorption costing po is yung traditional income statement na lagi natin ginagawa. Number 2, ang variable costing po, ang splitting niya ay variable cost at saka fixed cost. So, ibig sabihin, pag variable costing, may contribution margin. Number 3, when production is equal to sales, absorption costing net income is equal to variable costing net income. If production is greater than sales, then, if production is greater than sales, absorption costing net income is also greater than your variable costing net income. Lastly, kapag ka naman po production is lesser than sales, at paano nangyayari yun? Nagkakaroon kasi ng beginning inventory. Ibig sabihin, your absorption costing net income will be lower than your variable costing net income. And the only difference between absorption costing and variable costing is the fixed manufacturing overhead component na naiiwan po sa ating mga beginning or ending inventories. Okay, yun lang po. Yan lang po ang ating discussion sa absorption and variable costing. And now our next lesson after the break is cost volume profit analysis. Let's have a 15-minute break. Let's go back by 7:27. Thank you very much. Yung mga gusto mag-quick dinner or merienda, CR break. So medyo habaan natin 15 minutes kasi baka yung iba sa inyo hindi pa nagdi-dinner, hanggang 9 tayo. So ang hirap na makinig ng gutom. So yung mga gusto mag-quick merienda or dinner, balik tayo ng 7:27. Thank you very much. Balik tayo and see you again. We are now in our second part and we start with our discussion of CVP analysis. Cost volume profit analysis is a powerful tool that helps managers understand the relationships among cost, volume, and profit. Ay, wait lang. Teka, hindi ako nakapag-system check uli. Naririnig nyo naman po akong maayos, hindi po ba?
Yes po.
Yes po, sir.
Slides, okay tayo?
Yes po, sir.
Okay, pati laser pointer, mahalaga yan para nasusundan nyo. Okay tayo?
Yes po.
Yes po, sir.
Sige, kinig lang kayo mabuti. Okay, CVP analysis or cost volume profit analysis is a powerful tool that helps managers understand the relationships among cost, volume, and profit. Cost, lahat ng nai-incur at nagagastos natin. Volume of sales and volume of production and its effect on profit. CVP analysis focuses on how profits are being affected by the following 5 factors. We have the selling price per unit, Sales volume, ilang units yung nabenta, at ano yung variable cost associated with those sales volume, total fixed cost, and syempre if the company is into multiple product line, product mix. Okay? I-preempt ko lang yung product mix. Sa exam, syempre, given na yung product mix. 2/3, 1/3, 20%. Basically, kung ilang percent yung nagko-constitute sa mga product A, product B, product C natin into total sales. But in reality, ang product mix po kasi pinag-aaralan din ng management, no? Kung ilan talaga yung nabebenta nila sa product A, product B, product C. So may mga market researches po 'yan. Tsaka syempre gumagamit din po sila ng mga previous information na gaano ba kalakas yung benta natin sa product A, product B, product C para makuha yung product mix. But I'm telling you, given naman siya sa exam, so wag kayong ma-stress na magpaka-marketing expert para makuha yung product mix. Either way, pagka kayo naman po ay nasa industry na, may experience nyo naman, no, na mag-analyze ng product mixes kung kayo po ay mapupunta sa medyo malaking company na medyo numerous ang product lines. Tapos ma-assign kayo sa mga ganyang bagay. So, yun po. But in our examination given po ang product mix, huwag kayong mag-alala. Okay? So, yun po. Break-even point is the point where operationally there is no profit and loss. Zero ang net income. Kumbaga sa layman's term, bawi lang ang puhunan. Okay? This is the point where all sales are equal to total variable cost and total fixed cost. So kung ano yung lahat ng cost of production mo na cover nung sales mo, ang net income mo, zero. But I have to stress this word very carefully, operationally, kasi hindi kasama yung mga finance cost natin, katulad ng interest expense. No? Tax effect pwede pa. Pero yung mga finance cost natin like interest expense, hindi po natin siya naisasama sa analysis. So ang nangyayari, ang CVP analysis natin is actually on an operational perspective lang. Hindi kasama yung mga interest expense, loans. Yung mga effects ng loans. Okay, guys, sorry, meron po yata tayong naka-unmute na participant. So makiki-unmute lang po sana. Paki-check po yung ating mga microphone yan. Thank you po. Salamat po. Para hindi po siya na-distract sa iba. Yan. So thank you po. Ayan po. So salamat. Okay, so yun po. Ang point of view po natin sa CVP analysis, operational ha. Operational lang. Hindi kasama yung interest expense. Taxes yun nga pwede pa kasi may after tax effects tayong ina-analyze dito. No? So you have to stress it na operationally. Okay? So pag lumabas sa exam yan, dapat makita niyo yung word na yan. Operationally. Okay? So yun po. Bawi lang ang puhunan in a layman's term. Yun po yung sinasabi nating break-even point. No? So kapag ka po kayo may mga online business, kesa sabihin nyo po sa inyong mga friends or family na, di bawi nga lang puhunan ko kung online seller kayo, maybe it's the time for you to use the word, ano mommy, I'm break even. So yun na yung gagamitin nating word, di ba? Wag na tayo magbawi lang ang puhunan, pakita nating BSA or BSMA student tayo, kahit sa nanay natin, para makita niyang nag-aaral kayo ng mabuti. Okay, so ang gagamitin po natin sa CVP analysis is actually your concepts that we had in variable costing, which is separating your cost of production and other expenses as to variable and fixed cost, not as COGS and OPEX. No? Paano po ba nakuha yung formula natin sa CVP analysis? Ang nangyayari po kasi is, sabi po natin, yung sales in units natin, pag minultiply natin sa contribution margin per unit, yun po yung total contribution margin. Ito po yung CM. Which is, kung babalik rin natin, yung contribution margin natin divided by contribution margin per unit, yun yung number of units sold. Tapos sabi po natin, equal lang naman ang fixed cost tsaka contribution margin at break-even point kasi kung ano to, yun na rin tong fixed cost. So ito minus ito, magsisiro kasi pareho lang siya. So pwede mo nang idiretso. Kaya ganun po yung formula niya. Na kung ano yung fixed cost mo, pag dinivide mo sa CM per unit, para lang din mong sinabi na contribution margin divided by CM per unit, yun yung sales. Kasi pareho lang naman yung fixed cost tsaka CM. So fixed cost divided by CM is the number of units you need to sell in order to break even at a point na ang CM mo ay equal sa fixed cost. Kaya po ganyan yung formula natin ng CVP analysis ng break-even point. Okay. So Actually, nasanay din po kayo sa mga formulas na to. So, isa-isahin na lang natin dito. Pero sorry. Sorry. Ang ituturo ko po sa inyong technique is paanong hindi nagagamit nitong mga formulas na ito na iikutan nyo lang yung variable costing income statement natin. Pero kung dito kayo sanay, wala namang problema. Okay? So your break-even point in units is you just divide your fixed cost to your CM per unit. Kung sales ang gusto mong kuning break-even point sa CMR. At paano po kunin ng CMR? Yung CM mo, divide mo lang sa sales. Okay? Required units naman po if you have any target net income. So yung fixed cost, dadagdagan mo lang ng target net income, di-divide mo sa CM per unit. And then pag required sales naman po, peso sales, sa CM ratio nyo po siya i-divide. Okay? And then meron po tayong tinatawag na konsepto ng margin of safety. Margin of safety is actual or budgeted sales less your break-even sales. Pag sinabi po nating margin of safety, yun po yung area na dapat, hanggang dito lang dapat umiikot yung sales mo. Pag bumaba ka sa break-even sales, maglo-loss ka na. So yung margin of safety is the level na kapag yung sales mo within the margin of safety pa, profitable ka pa. Pero kunyari, ito yung break-even point mo, tapos bumaba na yung sales mo doon, wala, nasa loss area ka na. So ang gusto nating mangyari, yung company, yung sales nila, nasa margin of safety. Okay? Margin of safety ratio, meron po tayong ganun, which is margin of safety divided by the actual or budgeted sales. Okay? And then degree of operating leverage po is CM over net income. So ang madalas pong nagkakaroon ng high degree of operating leverage is pag mas mataas po ang fixed cost natin. Okay? Kasi ang gumagalaw na lang halos yung variable cost mo. So medyo sensitive siya. So kung ang degree of operating leverage mo ay 1.5 tapos tumaas ang sales mo ng 10%, so expect mo profit mo will increase by 15%. Pero kung yung kabilang company, ang degree of operating leverage nila mga 1.2 lang, so 12% lang ang magiging increase kapag ang sales nila tumaas ng 10%. So 12% lang yung increase nila sa profit. So ganun po yun. So ibig sabihin, the higher the degree of operating leverage, mas sensitive sila sa increase in prices or sales. Pero mas sensitive din sila pag mas mababa pag bumaba naman yung sales. Okay, basta pag degree of operating leverage, ang lagi nyo tatandaan, ang effect niya pareho. Parang kung mataas ang dol mo, yung sales mo pag tumaas, so syempre tataas din. Pero expect mo na pag bumaba ang sales mo, talagang bababa din. Dahil lalo na kung ikaw yung company na mataas yung degree of operating leverage. I'll be presenting you some items here na kahit hindi nyo na gamitin tong mga formulas na to, makukuha nyo yung mga sagot no sa exam. Talaga ba? Okay, sige, check natin. Sige. First is actually na-solve na namin to ng mga babies ko ng 2-4 tsaka 2-10. So mga 2-4 and 2-10 ko dyan na umattend this session, kinig na lang kayo mabuti para mastered nyo na siya. Okay? Sa mga first timers naman na madidiscussan ko ng ganito, ay makinig kayo mabuti para hindi na kayo nagkakabisado ng masyadong formula. Dapat ang naiintindihan nyo mismo yung konsepto para hindi kayo nagkakabisa ng formula masyado. Okay? ABC company sells figurines in which the selling price is 120, CM ratio is 60, and fixed cost is 90. Kung may tax man po tayong babayaran, 30%. Okay? So ganito lang po, pa-plot mo lang siya dito. Let's get the break-even point in units and sales. To get the break-even point in units, ganito lang po. Plot mo lang. So ito po yung ating income statement na variable costing. Selling price is 120, so that represents 100%. Ganun naman po lagi sa kahit anong vertical analysis, your sales is always 100%. If your CM ratio is 60%, automatically your variable cost ratio is 40. So, para makuha mo yung mga variable cost per unit and CM per unit, multiply ka na lang sa mga percentage. So, 120 times 40%, that's 48, and 120 times 60%, that's 72. Or pwede nyo rin pong gawin is 120 minus 48, 72. Ganun din naman po yung kalalabasan. Okay? Tapos, sabi po natin at break-even point, your net income is 0. Sabi po dito, yung fixed cost mo 90. So, yung CM mo, dapat 90 din. Di ba? Okay. Ngayon, at break-even point, net income is 0. So, CM mo, 90 din. It represents 60% of your sales. So, divide mo na lang. 90 divided by 60% is 150,000. Yun na yung break-even point in peso sales. Given naman yung selling price per unit. So, 150,000 divided by 120 per unit. And the break-even point in units is 1,250. Or, syempre, medyo alam nyo naman na yung formula. So, pwede nyo rin gamitin yon, which is yung fixed cost mo na 90,000, which is equal to your CM, divided by your CM per unit of 72. So, 90,000 divided by 72, 1,250 din. Gumamit ba ako ng formula? Hindi. Doon lang ako umikot sa income statement. Ganun lang kasimple. Okay? So kung gusto nyo i-try, edi 1,250 times 120, yun lang din naman yung lalabas dyan. 150 times, tas 1,250 times 48, yun yung magiging variable cost mo. Dapat lalabas 90. Fixed cost mo 90, net income mo 0. O, diba? Gumamit ba ako ng formula? Hindi na. No? Diyan lang kayo, paikutin nyo lang yung sarili nyo dyan sa variable costing income statement. Okay? Diyan nyo lang paikutin kasi sanay naman kayo doon yung pinapaikot kayo. Okay, next po tayo. Dito po tayo sa net income after tax if the entity sells 2,000 units. Okay. So, ang hinahanap lang naman po sa inyo yung mismong net income. Baka may lumabas sa exam na net income yung pinapakompute sa inyo. So, madali lang yon. 2,000 units na binenta mo times 120 to 40. This is very straightforward. Magko-compute ka lang ng variable costing net income, di ba? That's 2,000 times 48, 96, which gives you 144. Minus fixed cost of 90, 54. Kuha na mo ng 30%, yun na yung tax, and that is your net income after tax, 37,800. Pag ang tanong ay net income, asahan mo na straightforward lang yun, pababa ka lang, no? Pero medyo kabahan ka na pag ang tinatanong sales per unit. Ibig sabihin, yung tanong mo working backwards na, no? Kung alam mong ang tinatanong mga bandang dulo, expect mo na yun ang tanong pababa din. Pero pag ang tinatanong sa iyo yung mga selling price per unit, break-even point, medyo paangat yun sa equation. Okay? Sige, next po tayo. Required number of units to be sold to obtain a net income before tax of 50,000. Ito naman po yung mga questions natin sa break-even point na meron po tayong required profit. Okay? So, i-plot mo yung required profit mo, sabi before tax. So, saan mo siya ilalagay? Siyempre, sa net income before tax. Wag sa after tax. Masusunog ka nun. Di ba? Mamali ka nun. So, 50,000 po yung net income before tax mo. And then work back ka lang. If your fixed cost is 90,000, so 50 plus 90, your required CM becomes 140,000. It's either, dahil ang tinatanong naman sa inyo ay number of units, diretso mo na sa CM per unit. So 140,000 divided by 72 is 1,944. Or pwede ka pong ganito, kung gusto mo hitting two birds with one stone, ganito na lang. Makukuha mo pareho sales tsaka unit. So 140,000 divided by 60%, 233,333. Required sales yan. Tapos, given naman yung selling price per unit, divide mo yung 233,333 dito sa 120,000 and you will also get your 1,944. Ang mahalaga lang dito mga kapatid, sabi ko nga sa inyo, kahit hindi kayo gumamit ng formula, alam nyong paikutin yung sarili nyo dito sa variable costing income statement. Masasagot nyo kahit anong tanong ng CVP analysis unless pahirapan yung question. Okay? Ganun lang. No? So, yun po. So, 50, add back 90, 140 divided by 72, 1944, or 140 divided by 60% to 33,333 divided by 120, 1944 din yun. So, that is your required number of units. Required number of units to be sold to obtain net income before tax of 20% of sales. So wala nang ibang given, ang tinatanong lang, ang binigay lang sa inyo mga percentages. Ang sabi, ang gusto daw po natin is 20% ng sales natin yung net income before tax. So ganito po gagawin nyo. 100% to, di ba? Tapos na-compute na natin kanina 40 tsaka 60 yung CM mo, tsaka variable cost. If your net income before tax is 20%, automatically your fixed cost is being represented by a percentage of 40%. Okay? And tinatanong required number of units. So kung 60 tapos 20, mawo-work back mo siya 40, your 90,000 fixed cost means it represent 40% of your sales. So yun lang yung tanging paraan mo para makapunta sa sales. So 90,000 divided by 40% is 225,000. Pero dahil required number of units ang tinatanong sa'yo, you divide it by 120 na selling price per unit and you get 1,875. Okay? Nagkakaintindihan po sana tayo doon ha. Ginamit ko lang po is vertical analysis kasi sinabi 20% ng sales mo yung net income before tax. So 100 minus 40, 60 minus 40, 20. Or 100 minus 20, 60 minus 20, 40. So yung 40% mo nagre-represent ng fixed cost mo. So 90 divided by 40% is 225 divided by 120, 1,875. Okay? Yun po. Required selling price per unit. So medyo hirapan na natin. Required selling price per unit. So ito na po yung tinatanong. So sabi ko nga po sa inyo, pagka mga ganyang starting point yung tinatanong, malamang yung problem mo working backwards na. So ang sabi sa inyo, required selling price per unit if the entity wants to obtain net income tas after tax pa 10,000 tapos ang gusto nila ibenta 1,500 units. Kumbaga ang tanong dito, uy, ang gusto kong kitain 10,000 pero ang balak kong ibenta 1,500. Magkano ko siya ibebenta? Isa. Ganon. Ganon siya pag tinagalog. Ganon lang kasimple. Gusto kong kumita ng 10,000, nabayad na rin yung tax ko. Pero ang gusto ko lang ibenta 1,500. Sa tingin mo, magkano ko ibebenta kada isa? Yun siya in Tagalog. Okay? So you just have to do it like this. So kung 30% ang net income before tax mo, so your net income, if your tax is 30%, so your net income before tax is automatically 100%, right? So if this is 100 and then this is 30, so this is 70. So your net income after tax is 70%. So 10,000 divided by 70%, your net income before tax is 14,285. Okay? Tapos yun na po, kung ano na yung available mo information. If your fixed cost is 90, you can get your required CM already. So 14,285 plus 90 na fixed cost, your required CM is 104,285. You divide it by 60% and you get 173,809. And tinatanong sa inyo selling price per unit. O, ang sabi mo, gusto mo makabenta ng 1,500 units, so you divide it by 15 units and you get the selling price per unit of 115.87. But managerial perspective, minsan may mga tanong na ganyan. What is the closest selling price per unit na makakakuha siya ng ganitong amount? Kasi as we you know, hindi naman tayo nagbebenta sa market na ang presyo ganyan 115.87, very precise. So your answer would be 116 pesos. Pwedeng ganun. Okay? So yun po. Kung nasa choices, ganun. Depende rin naman sa choices kasi naka-multiple choice kayo. Okay? So sabi ko nga po sa inyo, kahit hindi kayo magkabisado ng formula, kung alam nyo kung paano paikutin yung variable costing income statement yung formula, masasagot nyo ang tanong. Punta tayo ng sales mix. Madali lang actually ang sales mix, hindi nyo siya dapat katakutan. Okay? Kung binigay naman sa problem ang selling price per unit, variable cost per unit, sales mix percentage at fixed cost, yan lang ang apat na items na kailangan nyong hanapin. Kung makikita nyo ang sales mix ang problem, wala ka ng problema, madali lang ang gagawin mo. Your first step is to list down the selling price per product line and the variable cost per unit per product line. Okay? And then you can already get your CM per unit per product line. And then, i-check mo na lang yung sales mix mo. Dapat mag 100%. Dapat yan. Madali pag percentage. Paano pagka ratios? So, gagawa mo siya ng fractions. So, let's say for example, 3, 2, 1. So, 3 plus 2, 5 plus 1, 6. So, 3, 6, 2, 6, 1, 6. Okay? Marunong naman na kayo niyan sa AST, sa partnership, di ba? Yung ganong style ng pagre-ratio. So, kaya nyo naman yun. Kung sakaling ratio ang ibigay. Pero kung percentage, di wala tayong problema. You multiply your CM per unit per product line to the sales mix ratio of that specific product line. So 60 times 20% is 12, 70 times 20% is 14, 170 times 60%, 102. Pag pinag-add nyo yung tatlo, ang tawag sa kanya, weighted average CM. Ang gagamitin mo lang na formula actually is fixed cost over CM per unit. Pero dahil naka-sales mix ka, yung weighted average CM per unit yung gagamitin mo. Okay? So 400,000 divided by 128, break-even point is 3,125. ng lahat ng product line. Kaso ang tanong, paano ko malalaman yung break-even point per product line? O madali na lang yun, di ba? Meron ka ng break-even point ng buong company o multiply mo lang siya sa sales mix per product line. 20%, 20%, 60%. So dapat ka daw makabenta ng 625 units ng A, 625 units ng B, and 1875 units ng C. Okay? Paano pag tinanong break-even point in peso sales? You just simply multiply it by their respective selling prices. A is 150, so 625 times 150. B is 625 units times 210 and 1875 C na 360. And that is your break-even point in peso sales. So, ibig sabihin, madali lang talaga ang sales mix. Huwag kayo matatakot sa tanong na sales mix. Again, starting point, selling price minus variable cost, CM multiply sa sales mix ratio, weighted average CM. Fixed cost divided by weighted average CM, yan yung break-even point. Tapos kung kailangan mong information per product line, this is what you do. You just have to multiply it with the sales mix. And then what you got as break-even point per product line will just be multiplied to the selling price to get your break-even point in peso sales. And that's how you do your CVP analysis for sales mix. And that's our discussion for CVP analysis. Let's continue with your activity-based costing and service cost allocation. Ang nangyayari po kasi mga kapatid, kapag ka po tayo ay gumagamit ng traditional costing, sabi ko nga po doon sa mga nakapanood na po ng YouTube video, peanut butter costing. Peanut butter costing. Kasi para siyang nagsispread ka ng peanut butter, lalo na yung mga mahilig maglagay ng palaman dyan na talagang buong tinapay nyo nilalagyan, nadadalok na kayo sa dami na nilalagay yung palaman. Ganun po yun. No? So ini-spread nyo evenly. So ang nangyayari, meron tayong mga produkto or products na yung mga pinoproduce natin, yung resources na nagagamit niya, konti lang. Pero dahil uniform ang pagbibigay mo ng cost sa kanya, sobra siya ng nakukuhang overhead. Meron din naman po tayong mga products na ang taas gumamit ng resources, ang lakas gumamit, pero na-allocate natin sa kanya dahil dahil uniform, baka mas mababa. Okay? So, ang nangyayari, if one product is undercosted, the other one is overcosted. Okay? So, yun po yung tinatawag nating product cost cross subsidization. Nasa-subsidize kasi ng isang product line yung another product line. Okay? Based on the allocated cost of production sa kanila. Nangyayari po ang undercosting kapag kakonti yung na-allocate nating overhead pero mataas ang gumamit ng resources. Nangyayari naman po ang overcosting pag mababa lang naman yung resources na ginagamit niya pero mataas yung, pagka mababa naman po yung nabibigay natin sa kanyang overhead. Sorry, baliktad. Mababa yung nagagamit niyang resources pero sobra naman tayo ng na-allocate na overhead. So yun po yung nangyayaring overcosting. So sa problem, kapag baka lumabas kasi sa exam na kunyari, pinakompute yung cost of production as to tawag dito, traditional costing. Tapos pina-compute yung product cost under activity-based costing. Pwede nyo i-compare. So kung may makikita kayo na parang nagbigayan ng cost, traditional versus activity-based, baka nagkaroon ng product cost cross subsidization. Okay, possible po kasi mangyari yon. So para ma-address natin yung ganyang problema, gagamit tayo ng ABC. Activity-based costing, as yun, alam nyo naman na to, no? Coming from your cost accounting class. Gagamit tayo ng mga cost pools and cost drivers. Kumbaga, iisa-isahin po natin talaga yung activities na pinagdadaanan ng products po natin. Okay? So, yun po yung activity-based costing. Nakaangkla po sa activity-based costing, yung tinatawag po nating activity-based management. Ang activity-based management naman po, on that perspective, is ang nangyayari po doon, di ba, syempre, pag activity-based costing, iniisa-isa natin lahat ng activities na dinadaanan ng product during the production process. So what happens is that na pinpoint mo doon ano po ba yung mga activities na value adding tsaka non-value adding. At kung sakali na itong activity na to nahuli natin, uy, wala na palang ambag to eh, dinadaanan pa natin eh. At ang nangyayari po kasi, minsan yung mga non-value adding activities, may cost pa pong associated yun. So ang nangyayari po, ginagastosan natin, wala naman palang inaambag sa product. So nakakatulong po ang activity-based management in a perspective that you can eliminate yun pong ating mga processes or activities na hindi naman nagbibigay ng value sa product, baka pwede na nating tanggalin. Kasi pag tinanggal mo, wala namang epekto sa product, di ba? Kasi hindi naman tayo magtatanggal ng proseso na nakakadagdag sa enhancement or sa completion ng product, di ba? So in activity-based management, always remember that we are to make tanggal of the activities na hindi na nagkakatulong sa production process and more so dumadagdag pa sa cost, 'di ba? So yun po. Okay, so in activity-based costing, your first step is to calculate for the overhead rates based on cost driver. So cost pool divided by activities and cost drivers. And then you just allocate the overhead based on activity using the rates calculated and compute for the overhead based on the amounts that you calculated. So let's have an example. McMahon Company would like to institute an activity-based costing system to price products. The company's purchasing department has costs of 550,000. Ito po yung breakdown nun. And has 6 employees. Purchasing has determined 3 major activities. Yung issuing ng purchase order daw po, syempre nakadepende sa purchase orders. Yung review ng receiving report, nakadepende sa receiving report. At yung phone calls, nakadepende sa number of phone calls. Now, during the year, 50,000 phone calls were made in the department. 15,000 purchase orders were issued and 10,000 shipments were received. So pag nakita nyo na yung total cost at saka yung mga relevant na cost driver, divide mo na agad para makuha mo na yung rates. Okay? So yung purchase order mo na 150,000 divided by 15,000 purchase orders. 150 divided by 15 per purchase order ang i-allocate mo is $10. Okay? And then, doon naman po sa receiving report natin, 175,000 divided by 10,000 shipments doon sa teka nalito. Doon sa 10,000 shipments natin sa receiving, okay, is so 175 divided by 10%, 17.5. And then 225,000 naman po sa 50,000 na phone calls, which is 4.5 for phone calls. So that's your first step, which is to get your rates. Okay, pag nakuha mo na yung rates, kung ano yung relevant per product, aallocatean mo na lang siya allocatean. Okay. Using the rates that you have computed. So sabi dito, product A is 200 phone calls. So ito po yun. 150 receiving reports and 50 purchase orders. O yun lang po. Tapos multiply mo na dun sa mga rates. So for product A, 50 purchase orders times 10, 150 times 17.5, tsaka 200 times 4.5. Tapos yung product B naman daw po, 350 phone calls for 100 receiving reports. 100 purchase orders. So multiply mo lang din po sa rates. Tapos yun na po yung overhead niya. Okay? So add mo lang po lahat ng na-allocate natin sa product A and product B. Yun na po yun. Tapos pwedeng itanong pa, pwedeng hindi. No, depende. So sa letter B po kasi sabi, if 1,500 daw po yung relevant sa product A at 3,000 units for product B, pwede ipang-compute yung overhead per unit para maging basis mo ng allocation pa in the future or just to get the per unit amounts of overhead. So, di-divide mo siya. Okay? Pero usually, on a managerial perspective, to lang naman hinahanap natin dyan. Kasi si cost accounting na bahala dito. No? Si cost accounting na kasi bahala dito. So, on strategic cost, dito lang tayo. Usually, kung magkano yung ma-allocate na cost. Okay? So, yun po. However, if the manager wants to dig deeper, pwede siyang pumunta dito. Wala namang problema. Yun lang po ang ating activity-based costing. Madali lang naman. You just get the rates, you allocate it based on activity. Ganun lang. Then you get the total. Punta tayo ngayon ng service cost allocations. Okay. Due to the interest of time, hindi po ako makakapag-discuss dito ng computation ng direct, step, tsaka reciprocal method. So hindi ko po siya madidiscuss ngayon. In the interest of time, medyo mahaba po kasi yung computations noon. So what I will be doing here is I will explain po yung stories behind those allocation methods. Ano po bang method ang applicable para sa kumbaga anong method, no? Anong method po ba yung applicable dun sa pag-allocate natin ng service department cost? Punta muna tayo sa production departments. Siyempre, meron po tayong mga office departments, meron po tayong human resource, meron po tayong cafeteria, material requisition warehouse. So, meron po tayong mga nagbibigay ng service internally, hindi externally, internally, na hindi man sa diretso na nakakatulong dun sa production process. Pero kailangan mo pa rin yung services niya para to continue operating. So, yung mga service cost na yan, indirectly, nagiging overhead natin kasi nakakatulong pa rin siya at the end of the day sa production process, no? Meron tayong cafeteria na nagsaserve ng lunch, snacks, or dinner sa workers natin. Meron tayong human resource department na nag-aasikaso ng concerns ng mga empleyado natin. So hindi natin naiiwasan na indirectly meron tayong mga overhead galing dyan sa mga service department natin. Ang tanong, kailan po gagamitin ang direct method, kailan gagamitin ang step or sequential method, at kailan gagamitin ang algebraic or reciprocal method. Okay? So ito po yun. Ito po yun, yung ating pong service cost allocations. Okay, first story. Direct method. Ang direct method ay gagamitin po natin kung si Service Department 1 at si Service Department 2 hindi naman nagbibigayan ng service to each other at directly kung ano yung i-provide na service ni S1 papunta agad sa production departments at kung ano man yung services ni S2 papunta agad sa production departments. Ganun po yun. Gagamitin mo ang direct method kung walang binibigay na service sa isa't isa ang service departments at dinediretso lang nila ang services nila sa production departments. Kapag ka naman po step method or sequential method, meron po tayong isang service department na nagbibigay ng service to another service department and sa production department. Pero yung isang nakakatanggap na service department, na service from the first service department, wala siyang binibigay papunta dito. So you need to rank, no? Nagkakaroon ka ng ranking. Ano ba ang ambag nito? Ano ba ambag nito? No? Kung sino yung mas malaki ang ambag, siya yung mauunang mag-allocate ng cost. So kapag ka sequential method or step method, titignan mo sa problem, ano yung sinabi doon na initially rank na service department. Kasi makikita mo naman yun sa makikita mo yun sa problem. Hindi man sabihin diretsahan, malalaman mo na, itong department na to mas malaking ambag kesa dito. So, yun yung magiging step method ko sa kanya. Okay? So, ang nangyayari sa step method, bukod sa si initially ranked service department, nagbibigay ng service sa kabila. Tapos, nagbibigay din siya sa P1, sa P2. Kung magkano man yung nakuha ng cost ni P2, tsaka mo siya i-allocate ngayon, kung ano man yung na-allocate na cost sa S2, yun na yung i-allocate mo ngayon sa production 1 and sa production 2. Okay? Pagka naman po reciprocal method, ang nangyayari po kasi is nagbibigayan ng services si S1, si S2. S1 gives services to S2 and to the production departments. S2 also provides services to S1 and to the production departments. So ang gagawin mo, kaya po siya algebraic kasi si S1 kailangan mong bigyan ng S2 cost na si S1 kailangan din ng S2 cost. Kaya siya ginagawa algebraically. Okay? So yun po yun. Ang gagawin mo is pagka nagkabigayan na sila ng cost sa isa't isa, tsaka ka ngayon mag-allocate to your production departments. So, sa exam, hindi man sabihin siguro sa inyo kung direct step o sequential method yung gamitin, alam nyong i-interpret dun sa senaryo ng problem. Kasi alam nyo na yung reason behind direct, step, and sequential method. So, pwedeng sabihin sa problem, pwedeng sabihin hindi. At least pareho kayong ready. E di okay, kung nakita nyo sa problem na use direct method, edi use direct method. Pero kung sa scenario ng problem, hindi sinabi, malalaman nyo pa rin pag binasa nyo ng maayos yung problem na, okay, nagbibigay yung ganitong service department ng ganito, ng ganyan. So sabihin man o hindi sa problem, alam nyong sagutin kung anong method yung gagamitin nyo. Okay? And that's our discussion for activity-based costing and service cost allocation. Diretso na tayo ng standard costing, yung ating pong huling lesson for our midterm examination. And I think we can end early so we can have a time later for your questions. Para ma-clarify nyo na yung mga gusto nyo i-clarify para yung exam ma-perfect nyo. Kasi madali lang naman yung exam. Kung nag-aral kayong mabuti. Okay, standard costing po tayo. Standard costs are the scientifically predetermined cost of manufacturing a single unit or a number of units of product or of rendering a service during a specified future period. Ang standard cost po ay dinedevelop natin para sa dulo may comparison tayo ng mga nangyari. Siya po ay benchmarks. Nag-set tayo ng standards, nag-set tayo ng benchmarks. The question is, sumobra ba tayo sa gastos? Or tama lang? Or uy, nakatipid tayo? Okay? Mahalaga po ang paggamit ng standard costing and cost control dahil nalalaman natin na umu-over ba tayo sa gastos or yes, wow, congratulations, nakakatipid tayo. Nagagamit po natin siya sa controlling function ng company. So pag tinanong kayo, standard costing and variance analysis is being used in what management function? Planning, organizing, leading, o controlling? Syempre ang sagot, controlling. Okay, gulat ako. Meron po yata uling naka-unmute. So, check po natin yung ating microphone. Gulat ako. Naka-speaker kasi ako dito eh. Okay, so yun po. Pa-check na lang po ng microphones natin baka naka-unmute. Yan. Thank you po. Salamat. Para hindi po siya nakaka-distract po. Okay, so yun po. Gagamitin po natin siya for cost control, no? Para ma-evaluate natin. Performance evaluation din kasi yan. But later in the discussion, we have stories behind those variances, no? So para masagot niyo yung theories din naman natin sa exam. Okay? So yun po. Yung mga babies ko dito ng 2-4 tsaka 2-10, kakadiscuss ko lang sa inyo nito kahapon. So dapat this is very easy for you guys. Kasi kakadiscuss lang natin nito kahapon. So kung ano yung sinabi ko kahapon, yun lang din yung uulitin ko dito. Okay? Development po tayo ng material standards. Okay, so in development of the standards for materials, una mong gagamitin, baka po merong product specification document yung company. So syempre gamitin mo na yun. Guided ka na nun eh. Anong uri ng materials, ilang grams, pounds, or pieces yung gagamitin mo in producing one unit. Ganun. Okay? Kung wala pong product specification document, edi mag-observe ka or itanungin mo yung mismo mga trabahador na gumagawa po mismo ng products mo. And then you inspect po lahat ng material requisitions and baka po makatulong din sa inyo yung ating mga previous or historical cost accounts. Okay? Siyempre, you need to consider the type of materials, yung quality, quantity, and cost per unit. Now, in the development of standards, i-consider mo ang material grade kasi usually pag mas mataas yung ang tawag dito, pag mas mataas yung quality ng product, wala tayong magagawa doon eh, mas mahal yun, no? So, pero ang companies naman kasi magaling yan maghanap ng supplier eh na ito yung quality na hinahanap nila doon sa materials but at the same time, nakukuha po nila yon ng mas mura. So, possible din po kasing mangyari yon. Now, in the development of your standards for materials, mag-aalaw po tayo ng normal ways of components kasi po baka normal lang naman nangyayari yun sa company. So, i-allow mo siya, lalagay ka ng allowance. Pero mga kapatid, check nyo rin, no? Bakit tayo may wastage in the first place? Baka pwede natin eliminate para hindi tayo gumagastos for wastage. Yun po. Sa labor standards naman po, syempre, ililista or i-identify mo lahat ng dinadaan ng labor nung product mo. Okay? And then, you should add po any cleanup cost, setup costs, and rework times. Kasama po kasi yon sa buong time na ginagawa po natin yung products natin. Okay? Ang maaari po makatulong sa inyo ay industrial engineering techniques, lalo na kung may separate industrial engineering department yung company. Pero magkakasama yon, engineering department. Tapos research and motion studies or time, in-house time and motion studies. and then your historical cost data. Yan po. Pwede pong makatulong po yan sa pagde-develop po ng standards ninyo ng labor. Sa overhead naman po, kung ang consideration kasi natin sa overhead is kung medyo maliit lang naman na percentage ang overhead sa mismong products mo, pwede ka na kasi mag-traditional costing. Yun nga lang po, kung gusto ng company na mas maging precise yung standards nila sa overhead, dapat ang gagawin daw nila is overhead is assigned to separate cost pools based on cost drivers when overhead allocations are made using different activity drivers. Sounds familiar, di ba? Ano yan? Activity-based costing. So, kung malaking percentage ng products mo at ng operations mo ang overhead, you need to be more precise and accurate sa overhead na i-apply mo. So, dapat mag-activity-based costing ka. Yun din naman po yung rational na dinidiscuss natin sa activity-based costing. Kailangan mong gumamit ng activity-based costing kung malaking percentage ng operations mo ang overhead. Kasi kung maliit lang naman at immaterial, edi pwede ka na mag-traditional kung tutuusin. No? Pero kung malaking portion at material siya sa operations ng company, you really need to be very precise about it. So yung overhead standards mo should be based on activity-based costing. Okay, so again, ginagamit po natin ang standard costing at yung techniques po natin ng variance analysis as a way for performance evaluation. However, there are stories behind your variances that as a manager, you need to take into consideration. Okay? Material price variance is favorable when an entity is able to purchase lower price raw materials. Totoo naman. Kung mas mura mong nabili yung mga materials mo, asahan mo yung material price variance mo favorable kasi nakatipid ka eh. Di ba? However, merong however yan. Since they are lower price than usual, hindi naman sa sinasabi kong ito yung totoong formula, but this is just a possibility. Kung mas mura mo siya nabili than the usual, baka yung nabili mo mas mababang uri or mas mababa yung quality. No? At pag mas mababa yung quality, baka sirain siya or hindi ganun kaganda yung kinalabasan, magkakaroon ka ng rework. At kapag nagkaka-rework, mas marami kang materials na magagamit. So ang mangyayari, yung material quantity variance mo, nagiging unfavorable. Tapos dahil nagre-rework ka, additional time din yon. So magkakaroon ka ngayon ng longer working time, in which ang mangyayari, your labor efficiency variance becomes unfavorable as well. Pero possibility lang naman yan, depende sa senaryo ng tanong. Kasi pwede rin naman na nagkaroon ka ng favorable na material price variance just because nagbaba ng presyo yung materials mo. Okay lang yun. Mas okay nga yun di ba? Kasi hindi nagbago yung materials na ginagamit mo, yun pa rin yung inaasahan mong quality, pero nagmura pala yung materials na ginagamit mo. So ang mangyayari, talagang favorable siya in a sense na nakatipid ka. Okay? So yun po yun. Material price variance becomes unfavorable syempre kung yung nabili mong materials mas mataas naman ang presyo. Now, one possibility na pwede siyang mangyari is it might be due to higher material quality. Okay? Pero sabi ko nga po sa inyo in strategic cost management, kung ang gusto ng company ay product differentiation or luxurious kasi yung products na binibenta nila, 'di ba? Kailangan nating i-support 'yon. It's not just about cost management and cost reduction. We need to support the strategy of the company. So kung mas mahal yung materials na kailangan bilhin just to be different and just to be unique, susuportahan natin 'yon. Hindi laging cost reduction ang ating pupuntuhin. Okay? However, management should consider controlling costs when material prices go too high just to answer material quality. So mga kapatid, ang trabaho natin bilang management accountant ay makapagbigay ng tamang information sa management kasi kailangan nilang ma-decipher yan, kailangan nilang makita yan. No? So hindi rin naman po pwede na porke answer tayo ng answer ng quality, okay lang sa atin kahit mataas ang presyo. Hindi naman. No? Meron po tayong kailangang i-achieve na quality pero habang mapapababa natin ang cost natin, dapat ganun pa rin naman po yung gawin natin. Okay? Now, another possibility in your material price variance is, mga kapatid, pwede rin naman pong just because of inflation. Oh, hindi naman nagbago yung quality, wala ka namang ibang hinahabol, pero dahil sa inflation, mas nagmahal yung materials na binibili mo without any effect on any of your production. Ganun talaga, mag-unfavorable si material price variance natin. Okay? So, ganun po. And maybe it's the time for you to revise your standards. Pwede rin po kasi yon. Kasi possible din po kasi mangyari yon na i-revise mo na yung mismong standards. Lalo na mapapansin mo yan eh. But parang laging may trend tayo na yung price variance natin unfavorable. Baka yung mismong standard mo na ang mali. So that poses now the possibility of a recommendation na, Sir, Ma'am, I think we need to change our standards na. Kasi parang hindi na siya nagiging realistic sa ginagawa natin. Baka hindi na po siya proper measurement ng ating mga ino-compare na amounts dito. Okay? Ang labor rate variance naman po ay nakadepende sa binabayad nating salary sa ating laborers. Ang mas titignan nga lang po natin dyan mga kapatid ay ethical considerations. Mga kapatid, hindi po porke favorable ay congratulations, nakatipid ang company, at hindi po porke unfavorable, lugi ang company na mataas ang kanilang nagastos. Minsan may ethical considerations po tayo dyan. For example, sa labor rate variance. Labor rate variance becomes favorable kasi nakatipid ka sa pasahod. Actually, red flag yun eh. What? Nakatipid ka sa pasahod? Ang susunod na tanong, bakit? Baka hindi mo nabayaran ng tama yung mga trabahador mo. May mga ganyang company. Dahil ang habol, mali, dahil ang habol, cost reduction, ang nangyayari, hindi nababayaran ng tama yung mga trabahador. So labor rate variance becomes really favorable, nakakatipid sila. Ang kalaban mo na ethics. You need to think of the ethical considerations as well, because at that certain point, parang mas maganda siguro na as long as tama yung nababayad natin, 'di ba? Sa ating mga empleyado. In a sense that pag nag-unfavorable naman siya, edi check mo kung bakit, 'di ba? Check mo kung bakit mas mataas yung nabayad mo. Pero kung ang kadahilanan ng pagbabayad mo ng mas mataas na pasahod sa empleyado ay kasi tama mo silang nabayaran base sa activities or labor na ginawa nila kaya ka nag-unfavorable, I think mas commendable yung ginawa ng company mo. So ethical considerations po yung papasok sa rate variances natin. Kasi ang efficiency variance lang naman yung bilis or bagal nila sa trabaho eh. 'Di ba? So it may arise, yung labor efficiency variance natin, it may arise when a laborer is working faster than the standard or slower than the standard. Pero again, sabi ko nga po sa inyo, hindi porke favorable maganda, unfavorable hindi na agad maganda. Example, your laborers work faster than the standard, favorable. Paglabas ng product, bara-bara pa lang ginawa. Oo, mabilis nilang ginawa, labor efficiency variance, favorable. Pagtingin mo sa produkto palyado, ang pangit, bara-bara, wala din, 'di ba? Slower than the standard, pero kaya pala medyo mabagal silang magtrabaho kasi talagang binusisi nila ng maayos. So at that point, ang quality ng products mo maganda. Ngayon, dyan na ngayon papasok uli yung revision ng standards. Baka kailangan yung standards, i-revise mo na ay, sir, kasi to achieve this certain level of quality, I think we should do this for 4 hours na. Parang hindi po 3 hours. I think yan na po yung nagiging norm natin. So, mapapansin mo yon, if your variances as to efficiency always becomes unfavorable, baka it's the time you revise your standards, because kung dun ka nakakakuha ng talagang quality ng product mo, ay yun ang kailangan mo nang i-revise, yung mismo standards mo nang mali. Okay? Ganun po yun. Now, a worker may work slowly if they are new to the job. So, kung bago sa trabaho, syempre mabagal, may learning curve pa. Or the kind of material na ginamit was bago, or a new technique was employed, tas hindi pa sila sanay. So, yan po yung mga bagay na magpapa-unfavorable. Which, pag nasagot naman na natin yung learning curve, tas sanay na sila, no-normalize na uli. Okay? So, yun po. And then as to overhead naman po, ano lang naman yan eh, ang point lang naman natin dyan is there is really a difference between your actual overhead and to the applied overhead or yung talagang standard, no? Ang kailangan lang natin i-consider, di ba meron tayong dalawang uri ng industries, labor intensive tsaka capital intensive. So if your company is labor intensive, hindi siya masyadong magamit ng machine hours. So more on direct labor kasi yung pasok ng cost mo. So mababa overhead mo. But if the company is capital intensive, mas marami silang ginagamit na machine hours. So marami silang ginagamit na capital assets, mga fixed assets. Ayun po, talagang kailangan medyo mabusisi tayo sa pag-a-analyze ng overhead dyan. Kasi capital intensive tayo. Okay? So yun po. Now, balikan lang po natin yung formulas natin for materials. Sorry, in the interest of time, di na tayo makakapag-practice mag-compute ng variances. Pero kung kayo po ay merong time, visit nyo po yung YouTube channel natin. Nandun po lahat ng computations natin. Sa YouTube channel ko, tsaka sa channel ni Sir Roque. So, nandun po yung mga computations natin ng variances. Okay? Material price variance, kasi tinawag na price variance kasi syempre difference ng prices as to actual price and standard price. Pero always remember that your material price variance is obtained at the point of purchase. Okay? And then sa quantity variance naman po is yung actual quantity ng materials na ginamit versus sa standard quantity ng ginamit. Kaya po siya tinawag na quantity variance, but it is being obtained at the point of usage. Medyo same din naman po ang perspective natin sa to labor. We just compute the difference between the actual rate and the standard rate. Kaya po siya labor rate variance. And then yung actual hours employed to standardize hours employed for the specific production process. Kaya po siya labor efficiency variance. Pero pareho po yan at point of production. Okay? Kasi wala ka mang pinapurchase na labor. Di ba? Okay? And then overhead na four-way po natin as to variable overhead, actual versus yung ating variable overhead rate na in-apply at actual activity. Spending variance. And then, dito naman po, parehong variable overhead rate, ang pinagkaiba is actual versus standard activity. Kaya po efficiency yung chine-check natin dyan. Ang possibility dyan, parehong favorable or unfavorable yung labor efficiency variance natin at saka efficiency variance sa variable overhead kung parehong ang application mo ng overhead is based on the direct labor hours. Pero kung magkaiba sila, syempre magkakaroon difference. Kasi direct labor yon. Baka yung overhead mo ina-apply using machine hours. So baka pwede sila magkaiba. Depende sa given. Okay? And then sa fixed overhead, actual versus budgeted, spending, budgeted versus standard, volume variance. Okay? Pag three-way naman po, 3-2-1. Pag alam nyo yung three-way, alam nyo na yung two-way tsaka one-way. 'Di ba? So lahat po ng actual overhead, i-compare mo lang sa budgeted fix at saka actual quantity or actual activity using the variable overhead rate. That is your spending variance. Tapos efficiency variance naman po based lang sa actual versus standard activity. Volume variance naman po based, ang pinakaiba lang niya talaga actually sa fixed overhead halos. Okay? And then ang two-way naman po natin is budget and volume variance. Pareho lang naman po yung volume variance natin sa four-way sa overhead na fix, volume variance ng three-way, tsaka volume variance ng two-way. Pareho lang po yan. Budget variance po kasi is actual versus budget. Okay? Kaya po siya tinawag na budget variance. Total overhead variance is actual versus standard. Okay? So, ang wag niyo pong kalilimutan yung interconnections ng ating overhead variances. Okay? For example, syempre dapat whether four-way, three-way, two-way, one-way yan, dapat pare-pareho yan. Tapos, yung pag pinag-add po natin yung variable overhead spending variance tsaka fixed overhead spending variance, yun po yung total spending variance natin as to three-way. Tapos, pag pinag-add naman po natin si variable overhead spending variance, variable overhead efficiency variance, tsaka fixed overhead spending variance, yun yung budget variance. Or simply, spending variance plus efficiency variance, budget variance. Okay? So baka may lumabas na tanong sa exam about the interconnectivity of all these overhead components. So dapat alam nyo kung paano siya nagko-connect-connecta sa isa't isa. Lalo na yung volume variance natin, pare-pareho lang naman yan. Yung mga ganong bagay. Okay? So wag nyo kalilimutan how the overhead components work with each other. Yun po. Okay, and then sa mix and yield variances lang naman po, nangyayari po kasi yan kapag dalawang uri ng materials yung pinagmi-mix natin. And then sa labor naman po, dalawang uri ng labor yung ginagamit for the products. So pag material price variance, actual and standard prices. Pag mix variance, actual and standard mixes. Tapos, dun sa mga mixes na ginagawa mo, ano yung kinalabasan na actual or standard? Kaya po, yield variance. Ang yield variance po kasi refers dun sa kinalabasan ng mixes mo. Okay? Kaya siya actual quantity or activity versus standard quantity or activity. Material yield variance po yun. Okay? Pag labor naman po, halos ganun din. So rate, actual and standard rate of labor versus, and then also those mixes, ano yung naging yield? Labor yield variance. Okay, yun lang po. So again, for detailed problem discussion, in the interest of time, hindi tayo makakapag-practice ng calculations. So for detailed problem calculations and theory discussions, ayan po, you can visit my YouTube channel on YouTube. Mula orientation, mula orientation hanggang standard costing, ibig sabihin, buong midterm exam lessons nandyan po sa ating YouTube channel. And dun po sa mga nagtitiwala sa akin na yan po yung ginagamit yung video lessons para matuto ng strategic cost management, maraming salamat po sa inyo. So yun lamang po, and I'm opening now the floor for your questions and answers. And God is with you. You will overcome. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Submit to the Lord all of your ways and your plans will succeed. You will ace that examination because God is with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ayun, guys, open na daw yung floor para sa inyong mga tanong. Then, pwede nyo rin naman i-type sa ating chat box, no, para mas madaling mabasa.
Sige, ubusin natin hanggang alas 9. Kung gusto niyo hanggang alas 10 tayo dito magtanong tayo para para ma-clear out lahat ng hindi niyo naiintindihan. Sige. Go tayo. Sagutin ko na yung mga unang tanong siguro na nandito. May nagtanong na kasing medyo ano. Okay, kanina may nagtanong, Sir, ang kasama lang po ba sa product cost under variable costing ay DMDL, variable overhead, or kasama rin po ang variable general selling and administrative? Okay, ganito ha. Medyo nakakalito nga no sa wordings kasi. Pag binasa nyo kasi sa libro, magkakasama daw na product cost lahat yan. No? Pero ang sabi ko kasi sa inyo, di ba, ang pag ginagamit natin yung words na product and period cost, yung timing ng pagpasok niya sa income statement. So kung sasabihin nyo sa akin na product cost po ba si DM, DL, VOH, and variable general selling administrative, ang sasagot ko sa inyo, oo. Kasi yun yung timing niya sa income statement. Pero kung tatanungin nyo kung manufacturing cost po ba talaga siya, syempre ang manufacturing cost pa rin po natin, materials, labor, tsaka variable overhead kung ang pag-uusapan po natin ay variable costing. Pero wag nyo nang masyadong i-squeeze yung utak nyo doon. Basta kapag variable costing, ang magkakasama sa variable cost, syempre lahat ng variable, materials, labor, overhead, and variable general selling and administrative. So dun sa nagtanong, I hope nasagot ko yung tanong mo. Yun po. Next po. Sir, possible po ba na lahat ng method of service allocation is ginamit sa iisang problem? Are we referring about the exam here? Are you specifically asking about the exam? Ganito lang po, no? I will not be answering you on the perspective of the exam. It's just that pwede naman po kasi talaga na isa lang ang given, ipa-compute sa inyo lahat using the different methods. Possible naman po yun. Possible naman po yun kasi pwedeng same lang yung given, iba-ibang scenario yung kwento. Okay lang po yun. So, possible po siya. Yan po. Okay, so the floor is open for your questions. You can turn off your, ang tawag dito, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, or kung nahihiya kayo, you can type your question in the chat box and I will answer.
Sir, may nag-open po. Pwede naman po mahingi yung slides niyo po ngayon for this session po, sir.
Oo, nasabi ko siya kanina bago mag-start ng second part. So, yung ano po, yung slides po ay ibamibigay sa inyo para makatulong po sa inyo. Yes po.
Then sir, may nagtanong po dun sa ating registration. May
Okay.
pinagkaiba daw po ba yung cost management last sem compare sa strategic cost ngayon?
Malay ko, wala pa ako sa PUP last sem. Joke lang. Okay. I'll answer you on the perspective of strategic cost management. Cost management kasi sorry, as to syllabus hindi ko alam kasi wala pa ako sa PUP last sem, no? Pero Ganito po kasi yan. Pag sinabi niyong cost management, it's about managing your cost so that you can reduce your cost of production so that it could help in your profitability. However, strategic cost management is the application of your cost information that will be helpful in decision making, and those cost information will be used in managing your cost. However, your technique is you should support the strategy of the company, whether it's product differentiation or cost leadership. Ganun po. So, yun. I hope yung nagtanong that satisfies your question. Sorry, hindi ko alam yung syllabus nyo ng ayun. So, hindi ko po alam kung ano yung tinutukoy niyang cost management doon.
May questions pa po ba, sir? Wala na.
Meron pa.
Meron pa.
Dine-direct message nila eh. Oo. Sir, if ever po hindi given whether ang materials are purchase or usage, ano pong assumption na gagamitin sa pagko-compute ng material variances? If ever hindi given ang materials are purchase or usage. Malalaman mo kahit hindi sabihin pag magkaiba sila. Magkaiba. Na iba yung, ay hindi sa bagay. No, your question is, hindi sinabi kung purchase or used. O di you can assume na siya ay usage. So usage na rin gagamitin mo sa price variance. Kasi if the problem is, kasi mauhuli mo yan eh. Mauhuli mo sa problem kung ilan yung binili at ilan yung ginamit. Pero on that note, kung wala namang ibang binigay na given, edi usage gamitin mo. Kasi hindi naman sinabi kung ano yung pinurchase. Edi given ang gamitin mo, yung usage. Ayun, I hope that answers your question. Okay. Thank you daw. Sige, nasagot na yung tanong niya. Okay, next. Good evening, sir. Ano po yung volume variance? Ano po yung sinasabing denominator? Ano daw? Prof mo ba nagsabi niya? Kausapin ko siya, di ko rin alam eh. Ano to? Okay. Pero yung volume variance kasi, again, as to four-way, it is the difference between your budgeted fixed overhead and your standard overhead. Ang pinagkaiba niya is the actual or standard activity applied on the budget. Kasi ang budgeted fixed overhead based on the budget. Ang standard based on actual production applying the standard. Kaya siya tinawag na volume variance based on activity. Pero yung sinasabing, ewan ko kung saan mo nakuha yung word na denominator. Sorry, hindi ko alam. Kung ano yung sinasabi mong denominator. No? Pero kasi, usually kasi, pag sinabing denominator, ano yung activity mo? Kaya nga siya tinawag na volume variance, di ba? It's based on the activity na nangyari. Kaya ka nagkaroon ng volume variance. It's based on the activity. So kaya siya siguro tinawag na denominator kasi usually we use those activities as our denominator. Ayan po. So I hope that answers your question. Hi po sir, paano po pala ulit yung step method na service cost allocation? Thank you po. Step method, gagamitin mo yon. Sige, bigyan kita ng kwento ha para maintindihan mo. S1, S2, P1, P2. Si S1, nagbibigay siya ng services sa S2, sa P1, tsaka sa P2. Pero si S2, hindi siya nagbibigay ng service kay S1. Diretso lang siya sa production 1 tsaka production 2. So ang nangyayari, mag-rank ka ngayon ng mga service departments mo kung ano yung ambag nila sa isa't isa. Kasi kung isa lang naman pala yung nagbibigay ng service to another service department, pero yung isang service department hindi siya nagbibigay ng service dun sa isang service department, i-initial rank mo si S1. Okay? Tapos, i-allocate mo yung cost niya kay S2, kay P1, kay P2. Tapos si S2, kung ano yung makuha niyang cost from S1, kasama na siya doon, yun na i-allocate mo kay P1 tsaka kay P2. I hope that answers your question. Thank you daw. Okay, so yun po. Any questions pa po? Teka, may tanong pa. Okay, dun sa nag-send ng photo sa akin, ibang tawag lang siya for volume variance. Yun lang yun. Volume denominator variance, volume variance. Yun lang pala yun. Kaya siya nilagyan ng open close parenthesis. It's another word for volume variance. Next question. Clarify ko lang po if paano pag given yung materials purchased and usage, tas wala pong sinabi ko ano pong gagamitin. Ano pong gagamitin sa material price variance at material quantity variance? Yung purchase materials po ba? Thank you po. Okay, diretso tayo sa tanong mo. Material price variance, diretso purchase. Material quantity variance, diretso usage. Kahit hindi sabihin sa problem. Ang MPV ay purchase, ang MQV ay usage. Kahit hindi sinabi sa problem. Any tip or technique po to compute standard cost for both labor and material variances? Wala akong tip or technique na mabibigay. Yun talaga, gagamitin mo yung formula. Formula yun talaga. Umasa ka sa formula, plot mo lahat ng given dun sa formula para masagot mo siya agad ng tama. Kahit anong method po ba gamitin sa service cost allocation, equal magiging answer. Kasi yung prof ko, ginamit yung tatlong method nung discussion namin last time. Kahit anong method na gamitin, equal magiging answer. Equal as to total overhead allocated, pero hindi magiging pare-pareho sagot mo. Hindi. Oo. Ginamit yung tatlong method ng discussion namin last time. Yung prof mo, kaya niya ginamit yung tatlong method on the same given para makita niyo yung differences nung tatlong nung tatlong method. Okay? Kaya niya ginamit or pinakita yung tatlong method using the same given. Ganito po kasi mga kapatid. Instructionally in accounting pedagogy, when we say pedagogy is the technique of teaching. Kaya kami gumagamit ng isang given lang using the different methods. Kunyari, isang given lang, tapos, ang tawag dito, direct method, step method, algebraic or reciprocal. Same given lang kasi gusto naming makita nyo yung difference nung tatlo. Pero wag nyong i-expect na pare-pareho siya ng kalalabasan kasi kaya nga namin pinakita yung tatlong method using the same given is because we want you to see the difference of the three. Kaya ang ginamit ng prof mo, isang given lang for all three methods for you to see the difference. Okay? I hope that answers your question. Good evening po. Di ba po ang total material variance is MPV and MQV? Clear ko lang po na kapag magkaiba ang quantity purchase and quantity use, hindi po sila pwedeng ipag-add kasi magkaiba ng basis. Correct. Okay? Hindi ka pwedeng kumuha ng total material variance kung ang basis mo ng material price variance ay purchase at ang material quantity variance mo ay usage. Siyempre, hindi. Okay, hindi mo siya pag-a-addin. Kung gusto mo makakuha ng total material variance, mag-compute ka ng material price variance at purchase, tsaka material price variance at usage. Para yung usage ang gagamitin mo for the material price variance tsaka quantity variance to get your total material variance. Pero, ang tamang technique po is talaga ang price variance kinukuha sa purchase, ang quantity variance kinukuha sa usage. So, tama ka po, hindi po siya pag-a-addin kasi magkaiba sila ng basis. I hope that answers your question. Medyo nakakalito lang po kasi since kumukuha po ng actual data to compute standard cost. Okay, ganito po, no? Nung college ako, nalilito din ako dyan. Bakit tinawag na standard activity kung kinukuha nyo pa rin yung actual? Okay, ganito po siya. Hindi ka pwedeng mag-pure standard kasi pag nag-pure standard ka, hindi na realistic yung magiging comparison mo. Ganito po ha, to compute your standard cost, ganito po ang actual, pure actual. So kunyari, sinabi sa problem, nag-produce ng 50,000 units at ang actual hours niya ay 1 hour per unit. So talagang 50,000 hours. Pero, di ba binibigyan kayo ng standard information? Sabi, the standard cost information for producing 1 unit is as follows. Dapat daw, the standard pertains to the activity itself. So, pag sinabing, the standard number of hours is 1.2 per hour. Ibig sabihin, Ang standard mo at 50,000 units na pinroduce mo is 50,000 times 1.2 hours. Yun ang standard mo kasi sinabi sa standard cost card mo, di ba meron ganoon sa cost accounting? Yung standard cost card. Kasi sinabi sa standard cost card mo na in producing 1 unit, ang standard mo 1.2. Yun yung sinasabi mo na dadaan ka pa rin sa actual to get the standard cost. I hope that answers your concern. Yan po. What if hindi sinabi sa problem kung anong method yung gagamitin for separating mixed cost? Should I use high, low, or least square regression? Hindi kami magsa-silent sa exam. Yun lang. That's how we will answer your question. Hindi kami nag-silent naman. No? Ayun. So, hindi kami nag-silent. So, gulatan na lang, surprise kung anong method. Pero sinabi. Sinabi naman. Sasabihin naman sa exam, no? Pero actually kasi, whether you use high-low method or least square regression, it's either equal, kung very precise yung least squares mo, or it actually, pag kumaga medyo malapit siya. No? Ganon. Yung example ko sa YouTube, medyo pareho eh. Ganon. Parang 2,300, tsaka 2,375, tsaka 2.5, tsaka 2.15. So medyo malapit. Ayun. So I hope those answers your concern. Meron pa tayong halos 15 minutes pa. Sige, keep the questions coming para matanggal na yung mga nyo. Para matanggal yung mga concerns nyo dyan. Hi sir, not a question po but an appreciation message. Thank you po sa video lesson sa YouTube. Doon po ako maasa sa first sem. Thank you po and hoping na maging prof kita. Okay. Thanks. Ayun. Teka, dinirect message so ayaw niya i-broadcast. So, thank you po for trusting me sa iyong lesson. Nagpapaniwala kayo sa akin kahit hindi niyo sigurado kung tama yung mga dinidiscuss ko doon. So, thank you po sa inyong paggamit nung YouTube discussion. Sige po, keep the questions coming.
Sir, on a non-related note daw po, bakit daw po ang cutie nyo?
Thank you po. Pag kayo binabati mga kapatid, wag na kayong pa-showbiz ha. Naku, hindi naman. Wag na kayo sasagot ng ganun. Mag-thank you kayo kasi pinuri kayo. Ganun lang. Thank you po. Thank you po. Nag-pimple nga ako kung kailan ako may discussion eh. Pero thank you po sa student council na Zoom ang ginamit kasi ang Zoom may pang-filter ng face. Kasi pag Google Meet kita yung blemishes pag Google Meet. Ayan po. Nako, parang wala na silang question. So, wala nang tanong Gusto ko lang po magpasalamat sa inyo. One of the prof I stand. Thank you. Thank you very much po. Salamat. Thank you din po.
Yan. So kung
parang
wala na pong kung wala na pong questions no at medyo gabi na rin po, let's proceed to the awarding of certificate. Yeah. Another certificate.
Second cert ko na to sa inyo. Thank you, Student Council.
Ayan. Nabago lang naman sir yung date. Joke.
Yung date, tsaka
Ayan po. Let me read the content. Polytechnic University of the Philippines, College of Accountancy and Finance Student Council, academic year 2020-2021. Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Professor Kevin Troy M. Chua, MACY, CPA, CPP, CTT. In recognition of your valuable contribution as one of our honored facilitators in CAF Review tutorials, May 13 to 17, 2021 via Zoom conference call, given this 16th day of May in the year of our Lord 2021. Signatories are Aaron S. de los Reyes, Counselor, Head Academics Department, Aaron Paul M. Garing, Student Council President, Professor Mark Anisito R. Perlas, CPA, Student Council Advisor, and Professor Julieta G. Fontes, CPA, PhD, Dean College of Accountancy and Finance. Again, thank you po sir for your guesting here once again sa aming CAF Review tutorials.
Thank you din po for having me. Maraming salamat.